Poland, in Eastern Europe, is an absolute death trap for road users. In 2021, 2,250 people were killed on Polish roads. Relative to population size, that's a death toll almost 50% higher than a country like France, for example. To the south of the capital, Warsaw, almost half of all accidents take place on this one motorway, the A4.
Na miejsce zdarzenia potrzebowałbym patrol autostradowy w celu zabezpieczenia pojazdu.
This 650-kilometer strip of asphalt is the longest motorway in Poland. It crosses the entire country from east to west. In order to reduce the number of incidents, the police are following a hard-line policy. Equipped with high-powered vehicles, they hunt down reckless drivers.
Proszę odsunąć szybkę. Nie dałbym wziął drogowego aktu na barana. Proszę panią, powód kontroli pani zacznie.
Since 2022, the fines issued have been going up. 1,000 euros in some cases, such as speeding reoffenders.
Czyli przekroczenie o 55, zgodnie z nowym taryfikatorem 1500 zł.
Although the Polish driver's license has a total of 24 points, they go down very fast.
Dodatkowo 13 punktów kary.
As for the legal permitted blood alcohol level, it's one of the strictest in Europe, 0.2 grams per liter of blood. In particular, the police are on the lookout for crazy drivers who take risks in order to get an adrenaline hit. In order to deal with these irresponsible drivers, A4 firefighters are working flat out in order to save lives. They are called to 600 road accidents every year. It's the third busiest fire station in the country. On call 24/7, they deal with all kinds of drama. Criminal lawyer Marta Zakrewska represents the victims of reckless drivers.
Poznałabym. To jest mój syn, mimo tych 3 lat.
She's in charge of a case that has shocked the whole of Poland.
Poleciał na dużą prędkość. Chłopiec był w szpitalu, był na obserwacji.
A closer look at the cruel world of Polish roads, along with those who are fighting to save lives. In the south of Poland is one of Europe's biggest intersections. These two roads are used by almost 100,000 vehicles a day. That's 34 million lorries and cars every year. With all this traffic, the risk of accidents is very high. The most spectacular, crashes caused by heavy goods vehicles, steel monsters weighing up to 44 tons, which destroy everything in their path. There are also violent collisions between cars, as well as vehicles coming off the road and multiple pile-ups like this one on the A1 in 2017. Nearly 80 vehicles collided as a result of fog and black ice. No one died in this multiple pile-up, but several people were injured. A few kilometers away in the village of Gliwice, the A4 firefighters have the onerous task of watching over this motorway junction. Since 1897, they've been based at this imposing red brick fire station, complete with a watchtower. 78 professional firefighters work here. It's 7:30 a.m. A new team is preparing for their shift.
Lesiek się jeszcze nie zebrał? Zobacz mi stację.
Raz, dwa, trzy, cztery.
Dobra, gra.
Adam, with his 24 years of experience, is one of the pillars of the fire station community. Today, he is the team leader, supervising the preparation of the equipment down to the smallest detail.
To musi być wszystko na tip-top. Jak zaczynamy służbę, musimy być, że tak powiem, zawsze mobilni i zawsze zwarci i gotowi. W taki sposób powiem.
Before going on service, Adam has a ritual. He checks the weather forecast. His day will depend on the weather.
Drogi nie są najlepsze i no bywa, że trafia się gorsza pogoda, jest więcej tych zdarzeń.
This evening, it's not the rain that's going to cause them problems. It's one of the A4's black spots. These toll gates, which were automated in 2021 in order to speed up traffic. With the removal of the barriers, they've turned into traps. Since there's no longer any need to stop in order to pay, latest generation cameras read the number plates and payment is debited from users' bank accounts. On the approach to the toll platform, the speed limit is reduced to 50 kilometers an hour, but no one respects it. Like this car, attempting to overtake just before going through the toll. Or this crazy lorry, which has lost control. Or this heavy goods vehicle, which failed to brake and smashed into a van on the toll's approach.
Robek, Wrocław. O kurwa, gdzie to jest ten Wrocław, bo ja ślepy.
This evening, the fire brigade has been urgently called to one of the automatic toll gates on the A4.
26 na miejscu rozpoznane. Się zrobiło. Tak, wyrosły bramki jak spod ziemi.
Once again, a vehicle has crashed into the toll gate. Its passengers are still in shock.
Dzień dobry, ile państwa jechało osób?
2 i pies.
2 i pies, jak się państwo czują?
Dobrze.
Nic nie boli? Kto kierował?
Pan jest trochę skołowany. Czy ręka
Coś
trochę
boli?
mnie boli? Tak.
No trochę było powijany, okej. Wezwiemy pogotowie, przebadają.
The couple from Krakow were on their way to a friend's wedding.
Przepraszam, a ogólnie wie pani, co się w ogóle stało? Czy chłopak zasłabł, czy zasnął?
Podobnie podsypiałam sobie. Ja jak się obudziłam, to wyszłam z tego szoku, no to było po prostu w aucie. No było, jak zobaczyłam, w jakim miejscu jesteśmy, to aż mi się wierzyć nie chciało.
The driver of the car, his companion and their dog owe their lives to these special barriers.
To jest taka specjalna poduszka antywypadkowa. Ona amortyzuje uderzenie samochodu, bo one ratują dużo zdrowia i życia kierowców. No, bo dlatego właśnie tak to wygląda jak ten samochód, bo inaczej jakby to było wszystko z betonu albo z jakiejś typowej mocnej stali, a to jest wszystko takie amortyzowane, że to się wszystko przesuwa, nie?
Adam, the team leader, has a fair idea what might have happened.
No bardzo dużo szczęścia. Jeżeli poduszki wybuchły, to prawdopodobnie było duże uderzenie. Pani spała, a pan prawdopodobnie też zasnął. Bardzo często. No co mówię, to jest rejon autostrad.
The ambulance crew attend to the driver who is suffering from pain in his arm. Adam and his colleagues keep a close eye on the third passenger.
Uważajcie, bo mam tutaj piesek też nie uciekł na autostradę, bo co prawda jest niby zapięty, ale no, teraz właściciele są w karetce i jeszcze nie zobaczyli. Ale zdarzenia ze zwierzętami się też zdarzają.
The operation is nearly over, but Adam and his colleagues have forgotten to check an important detail on the vehicle.
Jest gaz. Zobaczcie, czy ten gaz nie ulatnia się też samochodu.
No, ale nie chcemy tego bagażu.
As you can see from these amateur images, a car blows up in the middle of traffic. And here, in a service station. To avoid this type of accident, it's essential for the fire brigade to stop fuel from leaking. In the end, it was by going through the back seats that the firefighters stopped the petrol leak.
Dziękujemy za pomoc, za Państwa ten
End of intervention. The toll is open again. To avoid this type of accident when approaching toll stations, other European countries have taken precautions. Portugal, for example, has decided to remove toll stations from certain motorways. In their place, archways have been installed above the lanes, with cameras to read the number plates and allow users to pay. But in Poland, these automatic stations are still causing problems on the A4. 2 days later, another team of firefighters was called out to an almost identical collision.
To nie ma poszkodowanych.
Pan kierował, oskarża się na ból w klatce piersiowej. Także...
No, z poduchy jak dostał.
No. Gazu ponoć nie ma. Co on tu przywozi?
To znaczy, jest to miejsce, gdzie jest ograniczenie prędkości, tak? Więc kierowcy, którzy nie zaobserwowali wcześniej oznakowania i najeżdżają prędkością dozwoloną na autostradzie, w tym miejscu jest to zdecydowanie za szybko, stąd czasami dochodzi do wypadków.
The police must note their initial impressions as well as checking the driver's blood alcohol level. The country has adopted an extremely strict policy in this area. In the 1980s, Poles drank an average of 20 litres of alcohol a year, as much as a country like France at the same time. Today, the limit behind the wheel is 0.2 grams per litre of blood, or less than half a glass of wine. That's half the authorized rate in France. Such restrictive legislation has led to a 45% reduction in accidents caused by alcohol between 2012 and 2022.
Tak, zamykaj, tylko uważaj.
That evening, the driver hadn't drunk a single drop. There was no doubt in the minds of the police and fire brigade that the cause of the accident was excessive speed on the approach to the toll station. How can we avoid speeding, which is responsible for half of all road accidents in Poland? The authorities have decided to combat this scourge by creating a specialist unit, the Anti-Speeding Brigade. On the A4 motorway, these police officers are constantly on the lookout with ultra-powerful vehicles. Powerful German engines.
Samochód wyposażony jest w dwulitrowy silnik z turbiną o mocy 200 koni. Prędkość maksymalna tego radiowozu według producenta to 240 km na godzinę.
Damian and his colleagues have transformed these vehicles into mobile speed cameras.
Na wyposażeniu radiowozu, tak jak wspomniałem, wideorejestrator, za pomocą którego policjanci są w stanie zmierzyć prędkość poruszających się pojazdów, jednocześnie rejestrując ten obraz, żeby później móc odtworzyć go i pokazać kierowcy.
An expensive piece of equipment, these cameras cost almost 60,000 euros each. To catch motorists unawares, police officers patrol in unmarked vehicles.
A1 czy A4?
No i to mamy.
Poland is one of the European countries with the highest number of points on its driving license, 24, twice as many as in France. But it's very easy to lose them because the police don't let anyone off the hook. In less than 5 minutes, the team spotted their first speeding offense, committed by this black SUV.
166.
On this stretch of motorway, the speed limit is 110 km an hour. The driver is 56 km over the limit.
Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry, no nie.
Aspirant Jarosz, komisariat autostradowy Gliwice. Jakiś dokument do kontroli poproszę, panie kierowco. Zauważyłem. Zarejestrowana prędkość 165 km na godzinę, czyli przekroczenie o 55.
Ile to jest teraz?
Zgodnie z nowym taryfikatorem 1500 zł tyle wynosi grzywna. Dodatkowo 13 punktów karnych.
Naprawdę, czy mnie to nagrywa, czy nie. Ja wam się tu nie rozpaczę, ja błagam. Ja nie mam już pieniędzy na to. To nie jest moje auto, to jest służbowe auto.
Tak.
Panowie.
To deter motorists, fines rose sharply in Poland in 2022. 320 euros is half the local minimum wage. And you have to pay straight away. Unlike in some countries, police officers are equipped with a payment terminal.
Czuję się tak skrojony, wiecie pan. Wie pan dlaczego ja jadę teraz? Żeby zaoszczędzić 200 zł na drzwiach. Jeszcze raz na siebie.
In 2022, the Anti-Speeding Brigade, which monitors the A4, recorded more than 60,000 speeding offences. It hunts down drivers who are a little too hasty, but also other law breakers. Young people take to the city streets for drifting competitions. This consists of making the rear wheels of their car skid and slide on the road, a dangerous practice and of course illegal. Nighttime racing, which they immortalize, posting on social networks. These drivers meet up every Friday evening on the edge of the A4 motorway on the outskirts of Krakow to perform high-risk stunts.
Wjeżdżacie? Siema.
Siema, gdzieś się ustawić po prostu.
Wiesz co, tam po drugiej stronie, widzisz na wprost koło Bawery, koło piątki? No to tam masz miejsce, się jeszcze możesz wcisnąć obok niego.
These drift sessions are organized in the car park of a petrol station. The owner, himself a fan of fast cars, has given his consent.
Chodź. No chodź.
Arthur is one of the organizers of the event.
A teraz poczekaj. Zrobimy coś fajnego. Patrz. Patrz.
Yet the car passes just a few centimeters from him.
Bo tutaj nie ma się czego bać. Ufam mu, wiem, że on potrafi jeździć. Patrz. Czego się bać? Nie ma się czego tutaj bać. Wiesz. Patrz. Ja wiem, że on potrafi jeździć. Ja widzę, że on potrafi jeździć. Ma do tego zrobioną maszynę. Zobacz, on mnie nie uderzy.
Ignoring the danger, Arthur doesn't hesitate to first bump his friend Bartek at the wheel of this car. Bartek at the wheel of this blue racing car with 180 horsepower under the bonnet. The young man started drifting 2 years ago.
W sumie adrenalina i lubię bardzo zapach palonej gumy. Od zawsze w sumie motoryzacją się interesowałem, no i tak wyszło, kolega namówił, kupuj BMW gruzika.
Since then, Bartek has been hooked on this ultra-dangerous discipline. A farmer by trade, he spends his weekends screeching car tires.
Nic się nie stanie w razie czego. Wolę trenować tu na placu zamkniętym niż na drodze, na przykład.
He finally admits that he even practices his hobby in the middle of traffic.
Chociaż street drift is very good. Głównie staram się w późnych godzinach nocnych, na jakichś bocznych drogach, więc...
The young man has completely modified his car to skid more easily.
Na pewno jest większy wentylator założony, drugi wentylator elektryczny jest, żeby się nie grzała. Dyferencjał jest zaspawany, to jest po pierwsze przy zakupie gruzika. No i zawieszenie jest utwardzane, sportowe.
Like Bartek, everyone here has modified their engine.
Gdzieś tu była ta piąteczka. Jest.
The objective, have the car that makes the most noise.
Ustawili to po prostu programem, komputerem to ustawili. Jest zakodowane w ten sposób, że za każdym razem, gdy wali po prostu but do samego końca, to spuszcza część paliwa do wydechu i...
Napierdala jak z kołacha.
Some of these young road enthusiasts have paid more than 3,000 euros to modify their engines. That's nearly 5 times the Polish minimum wage. It's the price they have to pay to obtain the car of their dreams, but also to attract the attention of the local girls.
Stało się w ten sposób, że ja generalnie bardzo lubię zloty, lubię oglądać fajne samochody, popisy, chłopaki robią bardzo fajny show, także no jak dla mnie to po prostu znajomi mnie zabrali, bardzo polecam.
Ja nigdy nie byłam na takim w ogóle wydarzeniu. Naprawdę, super.
Ja byłam w środku aucie, naprawdę
No fajnie.
fajnie, lepiej w Nerczlandii, ale ogólnie
That evening, Arthur and his drifting friends were not disturbed by the police because they found a way around it. Their sessions don't take place on public roads.
To teren prywatny? Tak, nie przeszkadzamy właścicielom. Jesteśmy z daleka od aglomeracji, od zabudowań, tak? Jakby to powiedzieć, jakąś drogową ofensywą i mijaniem się z policją, tak? Bo jednak nie robimy nic złego.
Arthur may be confident, but he knows perfectly well that his group of drifters is on the authorities' radar. In Warsaw, the country's capital, the driver of one of these modified cars committed an irreparable act. It was October 2019. Driving at more than 120 kilometers per hour in a 50-kilometer speed limit, he killed a young father. Adam was taking a walk with his 3-year-old son and his wife. He was propelled into the air and died instantly. The reckless driver, a mechanic by profession, liked to show off his sports car on social networking sites. Janusz Popiel, president of the Road Victims Association, lives in the neighborhood and was deeply shocked by the tragedy.
Tragedia w Polsce. Na tym przejściu zginął młody człowiek. On przechodził z żoną, dzieckiem w wózeczku. Zatrzymał się pojazd na jednym pasie ruchu, przedtem były tu 2 pasy ruchu. Zatrzymał się pojazd w celu ich przepuszczenia, a młody człowiek w złotym BMW zginął. Została wdowa, zostało małe dziecko, które nigdy już nie pozna ojca.
Following this tragedy, the avenue was completely resurfaced. To reduce speed, a roundabout was built.
Teraz przebudowano to skrzyżowanie. Tutaj wcześniej była prosta ulica z 2 pasami ruchu w jednym kierunku, 2 w drugim. Nie było ronda. Ronda poprawiają bezpieczeństwo.
To bring justice to the family of the man hit on this avenue, Janusz is fighting alongside a criminal lawyer specializing in road accidents.
No właśnie, szukam, gdzie ja mam te obrazki będą.
Marta Zakrewska blames not only the driver's irresponsible behavior, but also the condition of his car.
Czujnika ABS biegły odpowiedział, no proszę Państwa, po to, żeby driftować, po to, żeby ścigając się z innymi autami, nie tracić prędkości przy hamowaniu, tak? Żeby te hamowanie było spektakularne, że jak wchodzę w zakręt, to blokują mi się koła i przez to doprowadzam do takiego jakby driftu.
The driver also modified the vehicle steering system, suspension and the tilt of the wheels.
Dziecko i mama, oni byli pół kroku za nim, tak? Zahaczył samochód, bokiem karoserii zahaczył wózek z dzieckiem. Dziecko w tym wózku przeleciało ileś metrów. Naprawdę cudem jest to, że dziecku się nic nie stało. Według nas było to narzędzie zbrodni.
To make an impact on public opinion, Marta wants the case to be classed as a murder and for the reckless driver to be sentenced to 15 years in prison. That's twice the usual penalty for road accidents. Will she win her case? The answer will come in a few weeks' time at the Warsaw courts, where she will confront the reckless driver. Back to the firefighters on the A4 motorway at Gliwice, in the south of the country. A crew has been called out in an emergency to a head-on collision, the kind of mission firefighters dread most.
Poszkodowane na chwilę obecną są 3 osoby, którym udzielamy kwalifikowanej pierwszej pomocy.
The accident happened on a small country road late in the afternoon at rush hour. It was a serious collision. Two cars smashed head-on. The driver of this grey car attempted a dangerous overtaking maneuver, according to the husband of one of the victims who arrived at the scene on his bike.
Oni jechali od Pilchowic tutaj do miasta na balet. Z tamtej strony był dość duży ruch i ten pan nagle się wychylił autem za jakiegoś dostawczaka i nie wiadomo, czy próbował wyprzedzić, czy po prostu zasłapł albo coś takiego.
Captain Simon, an 18-year veteran, is in charge of operations. His job is to coordinate the rescue of the victims.
Będzie kartę przewodowi. Tu przyjacielka nic nie boli, idzie tutaj u góry.
One of the motorists is in a very serious condition.
Jest twardy brzuch, mamy coś podejrzenie, że albo sposób, albo jest ten. Bo generalnie urazowo w porządku, głowa wszystko w porządku, nie leczy się, także jest do przekazania.
Dobra.
With the risk of hemorrhage, his state of health could deteriorate suddenly, so they must act quickly. But in Poland, the fire brigade is not equipped with medical vehicles, and they don't have any doctors either. In the event of a road accident, they provide first aid. And when the injuries are serious, as they were this afternoon, they have to wait for the ambulance crew to arrive.
Stanu poszkodowanego znajduje się w tym momencie na desce, przygotowany do transportu. Potwierdzam konieczność przyjazdu zespołu ratownictwa medycznego.
After 5 long minutes, the ambulance finally arrived.
Zamykamy całkiem drogę.
Simon wants to avoid a secondary accident at all costs. On a long straight stretch like this country road, it can happen very quickly.
Droga jest zamknięta, możecie tak stać. Dwie osoby poszkodowane, tutaj pan, twardość brzucha w tej chwili na desce. Raczej on priorytet, tam jest pani z raną ciętą kończyny dolnej, raczej mniejszy.
Jeszcze do tyłu, musi wyciągnąć.
The motorist with the stomach injury was rushed to hospital, but his life is not in danger. The man was very lucky in a country where country roads account for more than half of traffic accidents. These are often spectacular collisions. The slightest careless error can result in a deadly head-on collision. Accidents are often caused by a careless motorist trying to overtake a vehicle. But Polish firefighters have to deal with other types of accident just as serious. A van is in flames on the hard shoulder. It's the fire brigade's worst fear. Because this kind of fire, as seen in the footage, gives off thick smoke, blocking all visibility of the road for other vehicles. A pileup can happen at any time.
Jesteśmy, ale chyba już będziemy tracić łączność. Wyprzedzić go. Tak. Zamkniemy sobie ten prawy pas.
Time is of the essence. The van is still burning. The blaze is just a few meters from traffic. Fortunately, the driver is alive, having managed to get himself out the burning vehicle in time.
Coś niebezpiecznego? Jest jakaś instalacja albo coś niebezpiecznego na busie, na pace?
Nie ma nic.
Okej. A sam jechałeś? Dobra.
The van is made up of highly flammable components. It's self-combusted. The engine is still going, impossible to stop, even if you turn off the ignition. The temperature rose and eventually caught fire, a problem that mainly affects diesel vehicles. Elsewhere in Europe in 2020, a family was destroyed because of this mechanical problem. The death toll was extremely high. 5 children and 1 adult died in the tragedy. To extinguish the flames, firefighters use a special foam which prevents oxygen from fueling the combustion.
Piana inna, tak? To jest najlepsze stężenie.
Nie no, musimy pianę takie rzeczy, bo to są podstawy, przecież to są te. Jest pod tym względem groźna, bo widzi pan, szybka autostrada, 140 km na godzinę wolno. Ludzie nie wszyscy przestrzegają, widząc, że my działamy, przejeżdżają bardzo szybko, dlatego...
To avoid risking the lives of his men, Adam decides to close the motorway completely.
Słuchaj, na miejsce zdarzenia potrzebowałbym patrol autostradowy w celu zabezpieczenia pojazdu po zakończeniu naszych działań. Zwróćcie uwagę na auta, panowie! Zwracać uwagę!
The driver of the van, a young delivery driver, is still in shock. He had time to film the fire with his mobile phone. To gather evidence for the insurance company, but above all, to explain himself to his new boss.
Ja pierdolę, drugi dzień w robocie, kurwa, i LTK wyjarałem. O kurwa. Jadę sobie samochodem, no i nagle inni kierowcy, tak jakby mi chcieli to pokazać. No zatrzymałem się, żeby sprawdzić, co się dzieje, no i zauważyłem pożar pomiędzy kabiną a paką.
Czy to słyszy pan?
No oczywiście, ale od razu zadzwoniłem na straż, więc panowie szybko przyjechali. No właśnie jechałem odebrać towar i nie dojechałem.
Despite this misfortune, the young delivery driver was lucky. He avoided the worst in a country that has 6 fatal accidents a day. Some people turn road accidents into a real business. In the village of Bielsko-Biala, Kuba works as a breakdown mechanic. In 6 years in the business, he has been called out to thousands of accidents.
To jest auto z kolizji koło Bielska. W Żywcu to było chyba albo na jakiejś takiej małej wiosce koło Żywca.
He usually tows the wreckage.
Czołowo się zderzyły 2 auta. Ten Mercedes z Audi. Najśmieszniejsze w tej całej sytuacji było to, bo Audi po całym zdarzeniu wylądowało na Mercedesie. No wiem, o co chodzi. No wiem. No, ogarniemy. No hej. Jedziemy do Węgierskiej Górki koło Bielska, stawiać przewróconą betoniarkę, załadowaną. Jakieś 35, 6, 7 ton.
Kuba has just hit the jackpot. In almost 90% of cases, he tows cars, not very profitable missions. But today, he has to rescue a truck that has crashed 60 kilometers away, which could earn him several thousand euros.
Jest to ważne, żeby przybyć jak najszybciej na miejsce zdarzenia. Tym bardziej w takiej sytuacji, gdzie chodzi o betoniarkę, która jest załadowana betonem, który schnie. Więc trzeba to jak najszybciej postawić, żeby ten beton nie wysechł.
It wasn't on the motorway that the cement mixer overturned.
Zobacz.
Right in the middle of the field.
Dobry. O kurwa. Co tu się w ogóle stało?
The lorry overturned on this slightly sloping dirt road. The driver has already been taken to the hospital. This couple, who live nearby, called the emergency services.
Tyłem wycofywał. Widocznie zamiast się trzymać tej strony lewej, nie, żeby przy płocie bliżej, dlatego go ściągnęło chyba na tą stronę. Huk był straszny, to jest po prostu jakby bomba wybuchła.
The truck's owner has just arrived on the scene.
Kierowca zdrowiu po prostu za blisko się trzymał tutaj tego, jak widać, i usunęły mu się koła.
His employee's accident will cost him dearly. For this unusual operation, Kuba has brought in 2 enormous tow trucks. Their rotators worth 1 million euros each. He also called in 3 of his colleagues who, like him, will be working for several hours to get this truck out of the field.
Dawaj. Dobra?
They have to find a solution very quickly, because if the concrete dries, the truck will be impossible to move.
Bo z tym ile ten beton jeszcze może trzymać? Bo ja wam od razu mówię, że to kurwa to nie będzie godzina ani 2. Bo to no...
Kuba gets the ball rolling. Using a large steel cable and straps, he attaches the truck to his tow trucks.
Czekaj, poczekaj. Poczekaj. Nie, ona się obraca, kurwa. Nie, ona się obraca. Ślisko, no ślizga się.
The field is wet. The cement mixer doesn't grip.
Dawaj.
No ziemia jest, nie? Kurwa, to jest niemożliwe, nie? Kobra, nie tędy, tędy.
Time is running out because the concrete inside is almost dry. The lorry is getting heavier and heavier, making it harder for the recovery team.
Powiem ci, że już mi żadna kurwa dawno tak w dupsko nie dała, nie? Kurwa nieprawdopodobne.
Kuba decides to change strategy. He positions one of his two tow trucks on the other side of the cement mixer. It will pull in the other direction to act as a counterweight and prevent the concrete mixer from sliding.
Skurwysyn jest ciężki, ja pierdolę.
After 3 hours of effort, the cement mixer is finally upright.
To było najdelikatniejsze położenie ciężarówki w mojej karierze.
Kurwa, no.
No tak jak było widać, no nie szło. Trzeba się było 10 razy przestawiać, kombinować, myśleć, bo to nie jest takie proste. Ale summa summarum się udało. No. 3 głowy od myślenia, każdy robił tych ciężarówek kilkaset, więc tu pomysły jedynie. Może tak, nie tak, to tak. No, nie ma innej opcji przy ciężarówkach, szczególnie przy czymś takim.
Kuba can smile. Thanks to this successful repair job, he's going to pocket 3,200 euros. That's 5 times the Polish minimum wage. Miraculously, the router truck started up again. Its owner will be able to drive off with it. Back in Warsaw, the big day has arrived for Marta Zakrewska, the criminal lawyer defending the family of the man hit by a car traveling at more than 120 kilometers an hour. The trial takes place in a few hours in the presence of the accused.
Na pewno jestem zestresowana, to jest bardzo ważna sprawa. Jedna z ważniejszych, myślę, w jakich uczestniczyłam ostatnimi czasy. Zastanawiam się, na jaki skład sędziowski trafimy. Sędziowie są różni, prawda? Ten wyrok otworzy jakby taką furtkę, gdzie sprawcy tych najpoważniejszych wypadków dostawali taką karę, na jaką zasługują.
The victim's lawyer and family want the courts to classify the crime as murder.
Nasza jest ostatnia. Ostatnia jest nasza.
And that it will impose an exemplary sentence of 15 years in prison on the reckless driver.
To jest mój syn. Mimo tych 3 lat.
By driving at more than 120 kilometers in the middle of the town center, the driver couldn't have been unaware that he was a danger to himself and others.
Idzie. Poznałabym.
His lawyers, however, are asking for a much lighter sentence, only 4 years imprisonment. Marta, the family lawyer, is confident. Her first argument is the driver's excessive speed. She relies on the opinion of an expert.
Wysoki sądzie, jest jednoznaczna. Biegły oparł się na całym materiale dowodowym z wyliczeniem przez biegłego pierzchałę prędkości początkowej, czyli tej, którą biegły wyliczył na podstawie śladów hamowania przed tym momentem, jaki widzimy na monitoringu, a jaką biegły wyliczył na 134 km na godzinę.
But suddenly the judge raises a procedural issue.
Pana Adama Pierzchałę jako osobę, która była na miejscu popełnienia przestępstwa, przedmiotowego przestępstwa, ale później moglibyśmy przesłuchać jako świadka w tej sprawie. A nie można łączyć funkcji świadka i biegłego. Jest to podstawowy argument za tym, niestety, aby jeszcze tą dzisiejszą naszą aby nie kończyć, trzeba pana odwieźć do naszej jednostki penitencjarnej i do następnego terminu rozprawy. Dziękuję bardzo.
The court has decided to appoint a new expert to determine the speed of the car at the time of the accident. For the victim's family, this is a major blow.
Dziś można mieć z tyłu głowy, nie było też takie rozwiązanie.
Myślałem, że tak będzie.
Będziemy czekać.
The family were expecting the court to announce its verdict today.
Czyli znów za 2 miesiące.
O,
Lepiej.
nie. Jak na pasiecznego trafi, to z pół roku. Jak na Instytut Zena w Krakowie. Ale przykro mi.
Żeby było tylko tak jak...
No dobrze, do widzenia. Do widzenia. Się to skończy. No tata zmarłego wyraźnie powiedział, że nie sądził, że tak to się skończy dzisiaj, tak? Chcieli naprawdę usłyszeć wyrok. Oni chcą zakończyć ten okres żałoby. To jest dla nich naprawdę potrzebne. Im więcej czasu od tego wypadku upływa, tym pewne rzeczy się zacierają, też w pamięci świadków i wymiar sprawiedliwości nie powinien tak wyglądać, ale tak wygląda wymiar sprawiedliwości w Polsce, gdzie się latami czeka na zakończenie sprawy, tak?
Despite this setback, Marta remains hopeful. She's fighting to protect pedestrians because in Poland these road users are particularly vulnerable. They account for almost 25% of fatal road accidents. In other European countries the figure is lower, such as in France, 15%. These tragedies are commonplace for the A4 Fire Brigade. To come to the aid of pedestrians, Captain Greg and his colleagues have to stay in top form.
Praca, którą wykonujemy na co dzień, wymaga właśnie dużej kondycji fizycznej. Stąd właśnie gra na co dzień, zajęcia na siłowni, różnego rodzaju gra zespołowa pomaga nam w tym, nie?
But these moments of relaxation are always short-lived. The team has to be ready in less than a minute.
Reanimacja dziecka. Rękawiczki. Trzymaj. Dziękuję. Gotowe z tyłu! Ja na czarnego Zubrzyckiego.
A 7-year-old child has just been hit by a car. The accident happened in a residential area of Gliwice.
Brawo, jedź.
Jest pogotowie.
The paramedics already on the scene take charge of the child. According to the initial findings of the investigation, it was an accidental collision.
Biegło i tam jest zapięty. Po prostu jak przebiegał, to niby wyskoczył tuż przed pojazdem.
According to initial reports, the child jumped out from between these cars parked on the side. The driver at the wheel of this car could do nothing. The boy is between life and death. In order to get there as quickly as possible and try to save him, a doctor has been rushed to the scene by helicopter.
Chłopaki, śmigło leci na miejsce, trzeba znaleźć miejsce.
Dobra, tu będzie ciężko trochę, bo tutaj jest
skrzyżowanie?
przy rondzie bardziej.
Przy rondzie.
Na rondzie,
Dobra, a Jarek, bierzesz radiostację KSWL na U02, łączysz się.
Wezmę,
Dobra. Patryk, pomóżcie mu znaleźć miejsce na lądowiska i dajcie znać.
2 firefighters set off in search of a landing place.
Tutaj? Tu jest pełno drzew, tu nie siądzie, chyba że jest zajebisty.
Jarek, udało wam się coś wyznaczyć?
Jeszcze nie, na tą chwilę nie.
Dobra, okej.
Szukać miejsca na śmigło,
No.
to tam są 2 wojska.
Greg, the crew chief, is struggling to be able to land the helicopter safely.
Słuchajcie, kojarzycie jakiś plac tutaj zielony,
Za tym blokiem jest jeden plac.
ale po drugiej stronie Żwirki Wigury nie.
No, tam jest też po drugiej stronie.
Okej.
Tam też jest, tam jest takie...
A tutaj jakiś plac, Jarek, śmigłowiec mam na miejscu, nad głową. Skontaktuj się z nimi.
But the boy's condition is deteriorating by the second. The medical team in the helicopter can't wait any longer and makes a radical decision.
No dobra, będziemy już... Okej. Jarek, potrzebuję was tutaj na miejscu. Podejdźcie pod samochód, trzeba zabezpieczyć śmigło. Proszę przejść tam tą stronę.
The pilot embarks on a delicate maneuver. He lands his aircraft in the middle of the buildings. The slightest piloting error would result in tragedy.
Pan nigdy w życiu tutaj nie wyznaczył miejsca. Wziąć wam coś?
The doctor will quickly assess the child's condition and decide whether he can be airlifted to hospital.
Tam trzeba pomocy?
Nie, teraz wyszedłem, bo już za dużo nas było.
Dobra.
But the injuries are far too serious. It's impossible to transport him. The medical team will try to save his life on the spot. Everyone in the neighborhood is in shock. They know this 7-year-old child. He was playing in this playground when he tried to cross the road to go home to his father. The man who was at home at the time of the accident is only waiting for one thing: news about his son.
No, nie, spokojnie, niech pan przejdzie, będzie dobrze. Usiądzie pan może sobie do radiowozu, co? Na spokojnie, żeby pan nie chodził. Chodźmy tędy chodźmy.
For local residents, these seemingly quiet streets are actually very dangerous.
Kiedy jeżdżą tutaj szybko, też jeżdżąc tędy niejednokrotnie widzieliśmy te dzieci zatrzymujące się w ostatniej chwili. Dziwi mnie, że tu nie jest, nie wiem, ogrodzone to przy tej ulicy, albo gdzieś jeszcze jakieś dodatkowe zwolnienia, jakieś prędkości zastosowane. No jest to tutaj, sądzę, że często na tej ulicy, że ta prędkość jest przekraczana.
Następny.
The police begin their investigation. Investigators need to determine whether the motorist was driving over the 30 km/h limit. The driver, who has not drunk a single drop of alcohol, according to the breathalyzer, is distraught.
Niech pan przejdzie z nami, okej? Do samochodu do nas. Usiądzie pan sobie na spokojnie.
Nie, jest w
dobra?
porządku. Ja muszę tutaj zostać.
Co?
Jest naprawdę w porządku. Nic się ze mną nie dzieje.
Ja jestem mamą.
Dobra, ja tutaj strażaka zostawię, dobra? Okej? Jakbyście państwo potrzebowali pomocy, to proszę mówić, dobra?
The doctor spent almost an hour trying to save the boy's life. This kind of operation is particularly upsetting for the firefighters. The emotional shock is enormous. Captain Greg decides to gather his men together to make sure they can cope.
Dobra, słuchajcie, wszyscy podejdźmy do samochodów naszych, do 21. Dobra, słuchajcie, dziękuję za super robotę, naprawdę bardzo profesjonalnie. Pytanie, jak się czujecie ogólnie, czy wzywamy Anię Krywko, żeby sobie tam z nami pogadała na luzie? No niecodzienne zdarzenie, wiadomo, z udziałem dziecka małego, także przemyślmy temat i wrócimy do rozmowy w jednostce na spokojnie. A tak, super, dzięki. Wszystko mega bardzo dobrze.
Captain Greg, himself a father, is deeply affected. This is the second time in 6 months that he has had to come to the aid of a child seriously injured in a road accident.
Myślę, że tak, dlatego że też mam małe dzieci i obraz dziecka podczas takiego zdarzenia to jest koszmarny widok. No ale niestety nasza praca na tym polega, że musimy sobie radzić nawet podczas takich trudnych chwil.
The police investigation is still underway, but the motorist is unlikely to be charged because he was not driving over the limit, nor had he been drinking. The police have nothing to charge him with. To overcome these traumatic interventions in the brigade, each firefighter has his own method. Some climb mountains, others do sport. But one of the team's bosses has found a rather original passion.
Odpalam podkurzacz. Tutaj są kawałki drewna suchego. Chodzi o to, żeby stworzyć tutaj dym w tym podkurzaczu do pracy przy ulach, przy pszczołach.
ZB, a firefighter like his father, joined the fire brigade in 1999, a long career during which he has often had to deal with fatal accidents.
To jest ten dźwięk tych pszczół, dlatego że mnie uspokajają. No, przede wszystkim wypadki z udziałem ludzi, gdzie nieraz mamy do czynienia z różnymi widokami. No teraz nie będę tak konkretnie mówił, ale różne rzeczy się zdarzają, czy to połamane kończyny, czy na przykład zgony i tak dalej. Tutaj mamy w pobliżu dwie autostrady, które przechodzą, A1 i A4 i dość często dochodzi do takich zdarzeń. Tak samo i w mieście.
In 2021, Zibi spent 2 weeks in a specialist clinic. He couldn't cope with the difficult operations. In the end, it was the bees that helped him get back on his feet.
Uspokajają po prostu i obecność, przebywanie z nimi powoduje to, że człowiek się odpręża. Zapach zula, nektaru, zapach pszczół też po prostu powoduje to rozluźnienie i pozbywanie się stresu.
The efforts of Polish firefighters and the authorities to make the roads a little safer is beginning to bear fruit. Between 2017 and 2022, the number of fatal accidents in Poland dropped by 25%.
It's 9 a.m. in Bulgaria on the A1 highway, more commonly known as the Trakia. A road renowned for its poor maintenance work and countless defects. A serious accident has just taken place. This 15-metre-long truck has swerved out of control. Hurtling along at over 100 kilometres an hour, the driver was unable to control his truck. He crashed into this ditch. The breakdown recovery team at the scene are on a war footing. They have to recover what was once a 32-ton truck, now just wreckage.
Нищо не знаем, ние обаря са детуравцем по пътното и дойдехме веднага. Но не знаем, че ние просто идваме тук, почистваме мрежи и гледаш не купляме.
The driver has been extremely lucky. He's managed to get out of the vehicle unscathed, but has had the fright of his life. All this to avoid being hit by a car.
Ne oldu? Geldim, bir bayan birisi frene bastı önümde. Ben frene bastım, araba beni aldı ve yani kadın önümde durmasa bir şey yok. Kadın bir frene bastı, ben kadına vurmamak için frene bastım, araba beni getirdi.
He is an experienced driver who regularly travels on the Trakia.
Şimdi burada Türkiye, İngiltere. Standart. Tamam.
Truck drivers are the main users of the Trakia and therefore the most at risk. As the final juncture before reaching Turkey, this highway is a vital network for import-export, and this has taken its toll.
Тази сутрин продължава катастрофа с тир на автомагистрала Тракия. Няма пострадали.
Not a month goes by without a truck accident hitting the Bulgarian headlines. Following a head-on collision, these trucks caught fire. Here, the driver fell asleep at the wheel and lost control of his vehicle. With their speeding and irresponsible overtaking, truckers here are notorious for dangerous driving. Like this truck, driving straight into motorists. Or this one, which skidded and caused a huge collision, resulting in 3 deaths. In this accident, 15 heavy trucks violently collided. Trucks have become ruthless killing machines on these Bulgarian highways. Fortunately, today's accident has no fatalities, but the roadside assistance team has a daunting task ahead. For over an hour, breakdown mechanics will attempt to tow the truck out of this ditch. They must also repair the damage. These truck collisions are becoming increasingly frustrating for these men.
Какви смъртни случаи съм видял. Тялото тук е главата на 30 метра надалеч.
The majority of Bulgarian truck accidents are caused by drivers refusing to take mandatory rest breaks. The Trakia is renowned for being one of Europe's most accident-prone roads. With around 6.9 million inhabitants, Bulgaria is known as the poorest country in the European Union, but also as the country with the highest number of road fatalities. Thousands of road deaths are recorded every year. One of the most feared roads is the Trakia. 360 kilometres long, this highway spans the country and connects major cities like the capital Sofia, the city of Plovdiv and the city of Burgas on the Black Sea coast. The traffic is heavy with almost 100,000 cars a day. As a result, accidents occur every day.
Ако ми за първи път видя някой разкъсан, нормално е. Първото ми происшествие, отидах.
All because of a very poorly maintained road. With its damaged asphalt and multiple potholes, driving here is a constant risk.
You can see this. Ето виждаме една много голяма дупка, но тя не е нещо необичайно, има далеч по-големи. Карат по средата на пътя, защото в лявата и в дясната половина има дупки. Те на практика карат на зигзаг. Вие можете да видите.
The other problem is the erratic behaviour of Bulgarian drivers. In short, their careless overtaking, driving under the influence.
Е употребил алкохол дори в малки количества.
Малко една чашавина.
But also they're speeding, despite the limits in place.
В случая за деня най-високата измерена скорост е 190 км в час.
Given the circumstances, some Bulgarians are scared to death of driving.
Аз се чувствам като игра на руска рулетка. Ние не знаем в момента кой ще е следващия.
In 2019, a pile-up shocked the nation. The driver lost control of his truck and wiped out 4 cars. 7 people lost their lives, leaving their families inconsolable.
Смачкана като кутийка бира, кока-кола или каквото.
In 2021, one of the deadliest accidents in Europe occurred in Bulgaria, with 44 people killed in a coach that caught fire on the highway. Faced with this sad state of affairs, some people are fighting to save lives. For the last several months, we've been following the work of firefighters specialised in road accidents. But also the journalists and former police officers who are waging a battle against one of the main causes of these accidents, corruption. Between dubious practices, reckless driving and thrill seekers, this is an investigation into one of Europe's most dangerous roads. We're in Plovdiv, 140 kilometres from the capital. As the second largest city in Bulgaria, it's known to be the busiest part of the Trakia motorway and, above all, the most prone to car accidents. In 2020, the region recorded more than 1,000 injuries and 85 fatalities on its roads. Bad weather is one of the main culprits. Surrounded by mountains, Plovdiv has a very unpredictable climate. With at least 10 days of rain per month, the collisions and weather go hand in hand. Like this taxi driving at full speed in slippery conditions. Or this car that couldn't brake in time. This driver completely loses control of his truck. Marko, a breakdown mechanic, dreads these weather conditions every time he gets behind the wheel. It's 8 a.m. and there's just been an accident due to the rain. This car skidded and ended up in the guardrail.
Чакай, Веско. Чакай, че трябва двете ръце да работят.
Marco needs to remove it from the highway as quickly as possible
Няма да мога да бръкнем отдолу.
in order to avoid a multiple collision.
Върти ли се?
Ключа вътре не е ключа.
Ключа там ли е? Супер, Веско!
The wet road conditions pose a permanent risk.
Аквапланинг се получава и колите се удрят в несъобразената скорост, се удрят в антинелата. Сами виждате, че е опасно, не е никак лесно и добро състоянието на колата. Но за слава Богу няма пострадали пътници, това е най-важно.
This couple have been lucky, but everyone knows that an accident like this is bound to happen again. In Bulgaria, the maximum speed on the highway is not reduced when it rains. Motorists don't take extra care despite the obvious risks. An aberration from which some have benefited. Just several metres from the Trakia, this roadside assistance company has become one of the most notable in the region. The emergency services call upon its 25 employees as soon as an accident takes place on the highway. And to deal with all these breakdowns, the boss, Lubomir, has geared up with around 50 trucks. The most impressive is this one.
Това е един от най-така могъщите и сериозни автомобили. Разполага с кран, две хидравлични лебедки на 50 тонни. Няма нещо, с което да не може да се справи.
The boss knows that on rainy days, business will boom. 10 vehicles towed each day, 3 times more than usual. Powerful cars that get trapped by the pitiful state of the roads, inevitably resulting in aquaplaning.
Това са коли тук от последните 10 дни от автомагистрала Тракия. Катастрофи. Всичките автомобили, които са тук, има пострадали. Това БМВ от преди 10 дни, пак на автомагистрала Тракия на 46 км. Превишена скорост, водата го дига и от едното тако минава в другото платно.
The rain is a scourge in Bulgaria. Besides the lack of regulation, it also causes problems with the Trakia's construction.
Канали всичко е запушено, няма никакво течение на като завали на водата от платното и цялата вода минава през платното платно и се получава делта планинг. Високата скорост и водата, която минава през пътното платно, автомобил се подига и става на проблем. И това са последствията.
There is an example of this today. Bobby, one of Lubomir's employees, has been called out on an emergency.
Отиваме на автомагистрала Тракия, на 44 км има ПТП.
It's a surreal scene. This car has skidded off the road due to aquaplaning, shattered windows and a battered exterior. The vehicle rolled over several times.
Само гледайте надолу да не се завърти друг, че е много опасно да не ни удари.
The 3 passengers are already at the hospital and are in critical condition. For Bobby and a road maintenance worker, one thing remains a mystery: how to recover this wreckage from the ditch.
Тук долу няма минаване, освен ако е неотрежен. Никак не мога да...
Никак не става.
Даже запецне и край.
It will take more than an hour for the recovery crew to pull the car out. The rain is wreaking havoc in Bulgaria. It was even the culprit behind one of the deadliest accidents in Europe. On the 23rd of November 2021, a horrendous tragedy occurred on the road from Bosnek, 40 kilometres away from the capital city, Sofia. 44 people were burnt to death in a car accident. According to the initial findings of the investigation, the driver lost control of the vehicle due to wet road conditions and then violently crashed into the guardrail. He died instantly. A fire broke out at the front of the vehicle, preventing the passengers from escaping. The Bulgarian Minister of the Interior arrived at the scene in shock.
Такова нещо аз не съм виждал до сега.
Тук говорихме и с колегата Сарафов. Хората са скупчени, хората са на въглен.
Only 7 people sitting at the back of the bus managed to get out. They were traumatized.
Бял автобуси, две паркина, аз nuk më isha në zonë me qit, asën, edhe veç jam shoj bankime për një herë krisi, shumë një kris në mëlle.
Edhe kom pas njëri për me qëtë me mu, edhe kjo thërke një, edhe zdi që shkom dalë jashtë, dhe se kom paqëm, asë kërë e kom qamin.
Most of the victims were aged between 20 and 30 years old. 12 of them were minors. It was a tragedy that made headlines across the world. Yet another addition to Bulgaria's annual toll of more than 600 road deaths. But this particular accident shook the nation. In the Plovdiv region, speeding is the leading cause of deaths on the road. In this video, a careless driver weaves through the cars at full throttle, narrowly avoiding a collision. But sometimes others aren't so lucky. Hurtling along at 180 kilometres an hour, this car loses control, collides with 2 vehicles and causes an accident that could have been fatal. In 2020, reckless drivers speeding over the limit caused more than 1,500 accidents on the Trakia. To put an end to these tragedies, Highway Patrol are ramping up inspections. Running the show is Zdravko. Police officer for 5 years, he is waging all-out war against reckless drivers.
Тъй като дори и минимално нарушение да бъде извършено на закон за движение по пътища, могат да се настъпят тежки пътно-транспортни инциденти с ранени и загинали лица.
Today, the police officers are stationing themselves on this section of the Trakia from 9 a.m. until 9 p.m. It's a strategic position.
Местата, които се избират за контрол, са на базата на извършвания анализ на пътно-транспортната обстановка и най-вече на концентрацията на стъпване на ПТП. Основната роля на техническото средство все пак е превантивна, с оглед това да намалим пътно-транспортния травматизъм и
The equipment comes in the form of these mobile radars linked to their tablets.
Имаме възможност в пряко включване да наблюдаваме самия трафик, като самата камера отчита всяка една измерена скорост. В случая за деня най-високата измерена скорост е 190 км в час, като максимално разрешена скорост за движение в участъците в магистралата, за което ще му бъде наложено съответното наказание.
In France, speeding 50 kilometers an hour over the limit results in 6 points being deducted from their license, a €1,500 fine, and most importantly, a 3-year driving ban. But in Bulgaria, traffic laws are much less severe.
За извършеното нарушение, тъй като е извън населено място, не се отнемат контролни точки, а единствено глобата е с парична сума.
It's hard to believe that speeding on the most lethal highway in Europe does not deduct points from your license. As a result,
към момента имаме 10 нарушители на превишената скорост, като най-високо отчетената скорост е 190 км.
In Bulgaria, it's practically impossible to lose your license. Here, a driver has 39 points. Not to mention that the Bulgarians do not pay their fines. Take, for instance, this driver.
7-8 секунди, поемете въздух, аз ще ви кажа кога да спрем.
A random breath test.
Още малко, достатъчно. Благодаря. 3-0. Благодаря. Алкохол няма.
This motorist, however, has a hefty sum to pay up.
Установихме, че има 7 нарушения за превишена скорост, след което връчихме електронни фишове за превишена скорост в различен размер. 50 лева, 50 лева, 400 лева.
In total, the man has accumulated nearly €700 worth of fines for going over the speed limit, but claims to have never received them. Unable to verify his version of events, the police officer gives him the benefit of the doubt.
Право взимате книжката, може ли да му вземете книжката? Как е? Не, по закон вършваме глобите. Има 14-дневен срок да ги плати, да ги обжалва или да заяви, че друг е карал автомобила.
The driver can therefore continue freely on his way and will not be prosecuted if he doesn't pay his fines. In France, such a track record would get your licence revoked instantly, but here, negligent drivers have no fear of fines or losing their licence. Faced with this general leniency, Bulgarian city centres have become uncontrollable. In the middle of this concrete jungle, violent accidents are a common sight. While making a U-turn, this reckless driver hits a vehicle and drives it off the road. In Bulgaria, danger is present at every intersection. No one is safe, not even these ambulances that were hit at full force while out on a call. The fault lies with these drivers who mix alcohol with reckless driving. Here, the driver doesn't appear to have even noticed the roundabout. In 2019, more than 4,000 drunk drivers were recorded on Plovdiv's roads. So, to prevent these unsafe drivers from committing irreparable damage, the highway police are stepping up their vigilance. This morning, the team are carrying out breathalyzer tests on this section of the motorway, infamous for its frequent accidents. The limit is 0.50 grams of alcohol per litre of exhaled air.
Добър ден, господин инспектор от Гръцката пътна полиция. Пловдив ще бъде извършена проба за наличие на алкохол. Съгласен ли сте? Поставяме междуково техническо средство. Повечето от пътно-транспортни происшествия с фатален край или с ранение и причина на големи материални щети се дължат именно от това употреба на алкохол, наркотични вещества. Отрицателно. Този път имаме тръгнули, водач не е употребил алкохол, няма предишни нарушения.
That's if the driver complies with the law, which isn't always the case. It's not even 10 a.m. and for some, it's already time for an aperitif.
Не, чакай. 0,14. Стойността на алкохол, който е установен, е ненаказуем, за съжаление, но водача е употребил алкохол дори в малки количества.
Малко една чашавина.
Стойността, която установихме на водача, е ненаказуема по българското законодателство. Техническото средство трябва да бъде над 0,50 пробва на 1000, за да може да бъде създаден съответно алан и да бъде отнето временно свидетелство за управление на МФС.
0.5 grams of alcohol per litre of exhaled air. In Bulgaria, you can drink up to 5 glasses of whiskey before testing positive. In Plovdiv, the police officers' breathalyzers are off the charts. The record, one motorist has been stopped with 3 grams 51, the equivalent of 7 litres of beer. And some take pride in their overindulgence. These two young women are recording themselves live on social media with beer bottles in their hand. Clearly drunk and speeding, the driver loses control. The two women were killed on the spot. The kind of high-risk behaviour that sends shivers down your spine. Though alcohol isn't always to blame. Not a day goes by in Bulgaria without a calamity occurring on the roads. One particular accident left the entire nation reeling. In 2019, the Trakia was the site of a terrible car crash. That day, 7 people lost their lives. The cause of this tragic event was this 40-ton truck loaded with cosmetics. The driver lost control of his truck, destroyed the guardrail and ended up in the opposite lane, wiping out 4 vehicles in the process. The driver was killed instantly, and he was not the only fatality. Ilyana can sadly vouch for this. That day, she lost 3 members of her family, her brother, sister-in-law, and great-niece, aged just 12.
Това е брат ми и снаха ми. Едно прекрасно дете. Това е племенника ми, който си остана в кръгъл сирак. Ами, напълват ми се пак очите със сълзи. 10 месеца.
Like everyone else, Ilyana found out about the accident via the evening news on television. But at the time, she would never have expected her own family to be in one of these cars.
5 жертви и 6 ранени при брутална катастрофа на Тракия. Смачкана като кутийка, бира, кока-кола или каквото. Ето е тук, където е било детето на 2 години и половина. Където кабината на шофьора се е врязала в колата.
A professional investigation into the accident is yet to have been conducted. It's impossible to know whether the driver was at fault, but in Ilyana's opinion, he's not the only one responsible.
Не е проблема само в шофьора, това казвам. Да, сигурно нещо има, но и пътя е причина. Никой не може да каже. Нормално ли е това да става в 2020 година в европейска държава?
Given the conditions of the road, it's not surprising that this section of the Trakia highway holds the record for the most accidents. Cracks, potholes and ineffective guardrails. Since its construction, the highway has never been properly maintained. As a result, truck drivers often lose control of their vehicles. Despite the facts, the Bulgarian government has never wanted to repair this road. A week before the tragic accident, the Prime Minister that was in office until 2021 was still insisting he would not do any work on the Trakia.
Вчера казаха, кой го е строил, това ще го оставиме най-накрая. Най-накрая. 60 милиона не ми се дават сега.
Не ми се дават. Дай, ще го оставиме за най-накрая. Кой е той? Аз разбирам той да ги изтарява парите, но това са пари на българския данъкоплатец. Да, аз мисля, че моето семейство плати. Убедена съм. Плати за абсолютното безхаберие.
Roads in pitiful conditions, reckless drivers and an angry nation. These are the consequences of another well-known scourge of the country: corruption. In Bulgaria, 20% of the population lives below the poverty line, so all sorts of wheeler-dealing is taking place. The Highway Police Unit is seemingly one of the country's most questionable institutions. This is a problem that Bogdan Milchev is well aware of. Police officer for over 20 years, this man has witnessed his fair share of shady practices.
Ето виждате сега в момента как нарушителя вади 20 лева и ги дава на полицая. Полицая ги свива в ръката. Виждате как ги свива в ръката и ги прибира в джоба. Това е, за съжаление, в България.
With an average salary of 800 euros a month, the Bulgarian police officers have got into the habit of supplementing their income. During roadside checks, the exchange of money between motorists and police officers has become a standard. As a consequence, dangerous drivers are rarely punished. In this video, the driver managed to film the officer without him knowing.
Цепил съм ти спиране от движение, разбирате за кой да рече. Благодаря много. Цел ти разкатая. И ти иди да почерпиш. Две имена и подпис. И браво, Колев. Защото ще да го отнесе и ако почерпиш. Те са колета изкалят. Нищо долу.
To get off, the young driver had to shell out 50 euros.
И аз смело мога да кажа, че в България корупцията убива хората по пътищата.
In charge of the capital's highway police unit for 4 years, Bogdan has tried his best to put an end to this system.
И разбира се борихме много сериозно с корупцията, като имаме 17 човека дисциплинарно уволнени, на 11 от тях са повдигнати обвинения. Да се бориме срещу корупцията, нямаше как на улицата има над 250 полицаи и ние да сложим на всеки един от тях контрола.
Despite being ousted from the police for giving a speeding ticket to the Minister of the Interior, Bogdan has not given up the fight. Since then, the former police officer has been trying to save lives at the head of his own organisation. His main target is the infamous Trakia highway that spans the country from east to west.
Е в изключително лошо състояние, постоянно е в кръпки, постоянно е в дупки, неравностите са навсякъде, дори в момента се усещат, автомобила вибрира и минава през неравности. които са недопустими на една магистрала.
In this video, a motorist loses control of his car because of a pothole. It's the same situation for this truck that fatally hits another vehicle. At night, accidents are even more common. This car was crushed by a heavy truck following a flat tyre. According to Bogdan, the highway's dreadful road conditions led to the death of 150 people between 2016 and 2020.
Аз се чувствам като игра на руска рулетка. Ние не знаем в момента кой ще е следващия, който ще катастрофира и дали това няма да сме ние.
It took years of fighting and moreover hundreds of accidents for the Bulgarian government to agree to invest in renovation works. As far as Bogdan is concerned, the problem remains unsolved.
Да, това, което в момента ние констатираме е, че тези пукнатини на чисто ново път, който дори още не е пуснат в експлоатация, са се появили. Значи вижте, тези пукнатини в момента не са опасни. Тези пукнатини във времето ще направят така, че цялото платно. Видимо е едно, че се дават страшно много пари, милиони, милиарди за пътища, а те не са качествени.
These badly reconstructed roads have other repercussions. While the road was getting rebuilt, in order to allow drivers to continue their route, the Bulgarian government diverted all traffic to a trunk road that runs alongside the Trakia. However, this two-lane road with a 90 km/h speed limit is not made to accommodate the thousands of commuters, many of which are heavy trucks. Since then, the number of accidents has skyrocketed. While trying to avoid another vehicle, this truck swerves out of control due to driving at such high speeds. This car tried to overtake on a bend. The head-on collision with this bus was fatal. Tragedies that Dimitar Stoyano, a reporter for Bulgarian television, is all too familiar with. In his 15-year career, he's covered hundreds of accidents.
Щом е инцидент, няма как да е обичаен. Просто в България случването на необичайни неща, това, което видях, когато отидох на място с моят оператор, аз видях един автомобил Mazda с 6 или 7 трупа вътре. И то съвсем млади хора. Хора в порядъка 18-23 години. И второто много важно нещо, когато пътувате, можете да видите, че пътищата в България приличат на гробище. Имаме десетки, може би стотици надгробни плочи вследствие на инциденти.
It's no secret that these roads are among the most dangerous in Europe. Hundreds of headstones line the roadsides to honour the memory of road traffic victims. Some families have even built memorials. According to Dimitar, the condition of this small highway is at the root of these tragedies.
You can see this. Ето виждаме една много голяма дупка, но тя не е нещо необичайно, има далеч по-големи. It's something like a big canyon. And go back.
Despite the road's terrible condition, motorists aren't afraid to put their foot on the pedal. Bulgarian people seem to have their own particular method of avoiding accidents.
Хората се опитват да избягнат дупките, които се намират в двете платна. И за това карат по средата на пътя, защото в лявата и в дясната половина има дупки. Те на практика карат на зигзаг. Вие можете да видите. Всъщност избираме лентата, която дава по-малка вероятност за катастрофа.
On this two-lane road, slaloming between potholes can be deadly. One night, a car entered the left lane at full speed and hit another traveller head-on. The outcome? 2 dead and 1 seriously injured. The Bulgarian government promised to fix the roads with the 2.5 million euros given to them by the European Union. However, so far there's been no sign of reconstruction nor any explanation as to why, despite the journalists' relentless pursuit of those responsible for Bulgarian highways. According to Dimitar, a €1 million subsidy has disappeared.
Никой не иска да положи усилия за този път. Всъщност се планират ремонти с европейски пари. Ние подозираме, че ремонтът се бави, за да се избере правилната фирма, през която голяма част от тези пари да бъдат откраднати.
A difficult suspicion to prove in one of the most corrupt countries in the European Union, which has also been going through a political crisis since the 90s. But the government's apathy benefits certain businessmen. In Bulgaria, some are thriving, despite competition from larger roadside assistance companies. Stefan set up his small business 10 years ago.
Здравейте, момчета! Здравейте! Как сме?
Only 5 employees, but business is flourishing. Their secret to success? Work on all the small roads in Bulgaria where the other companies don't go. They carry out hundreds of jobs each month. Bulgarians have a rather unique interpretation of traffic laws. For no reason, motorists take unnecessary risks. Some assignments have been devastating for these breakdown mechanics.
Ако ми за първи път видя някой разкъсан, нормално е. Първото ми происшествие, отидах, имаше 4 човека убити. Още като работех при чорбаджиите, като почнах работа, вечерта изпих едно шише уиски. Защото ми се системите ми се размърдаха и на мен тогава.
On a day-to-day basis, he handles smaller accidents, just like this vehicle here.
Мисъл, някой е откраднал някой непълнолетен, ми се струва. Който не може да кара. Който не може да кара. Защото е глупав удара. И е бил пиян.
The car ended up in this well. Luckily, no one was hurt.
Парчиците. Остатъците от автомобила. Готови сме.
Minor issues, but major work for Stefan. When it's not drunk drivers spinning off the road, then it's the notorious potholes that cause damage. Every day, dozens of vehicles become stranded.
Дай да я качиш на ход. Само сега ще кажа. Проблема е от пътя.
While driving, the driver of this car had a nasty shock. Racing along at more than 100 kilometers an hour, he heard his tire explode.
Заради пътя има дупка на пътя и се спука, гърми гумата.
Today, the owner of the vehicle has been very lucky. Flat tires are often the cause of tragic accidents. Back at his garage, Stefan is looking at a job his employee has brought in. The driver has lost control of his vehicle after driving over a huge crack in the road.
Тази кола катастрофира в Стара Загора, вътре в града. Завърта, заиграва го и изгубва управление шофьора и така. Много е мощна, 600 коня.
Къде се вляза?
В мантинелите. По средата на двете платна, между двете платна.
Често ли се случват такива инциденти тук?
Не е много често, нали видя 3-4 дена.
The company's chief keeps all the vehicles he's towed in his garage. In this minivan, 7 people were killed. In this car, a young couple and a newborn were found dead at the scene following a head-on collision. And in the midst of the wreckage, the man keeps one of his most terrifying assignments. This 35-ton truck, now infamous in Bulgaria. This truck flipped over on the Trakia and took the lives of 7 people, including Ilyana's brother. The driver of the truck was crushed in his cabin and died on the spot. Called for backup, Stefan and his employees took 4 hours to haul this truck away.
Чувството е смисъл, гадно си смисъл, че има убити хора, но като работа, смисъл ми хареса тази работа и така.
Stefan's calling is to be a breakdown mechanic. It seems his business has a bright future ahead as another trend continues to wreak havoc. In Plovdiv, at the Highway Police Headquarters, Viktor Prazov is assembling his men for a clampdown. He has a very common practice in his sights.
Тази вечер ще се проведе специализирана полицейска операция във връзка с водачи, които дрифтат в град Пловдив и около град Пловдив. За целта
For over 10 years, the Bulgarian youth have taken over the streets of the city centre and turned Plovdiv into an open-air racetrack, a dangerous activity that is gaining more and more enthusiasts, all of whom could face a fine, a 3-month driving suspension and their car being confiscated. So tonight, the superintendent has called in special forces for backup, these men in black.
Добре, въпроси? Няма. Добре. Ами товарим се направо и слизаме надолу. Айде.
They head out to the city's ring roads.
Да се насочи на Асено-Градско шосе, да патрулира връзка с гонките. Този квартал е известен с големите и просторни булеварди. Изпробват колко са мощни автомобилите, което по някой път води до фатален край и им коства здравето и живота.
Every year in Plovdiv, 80 accidents are caused by these illegal gatherings. On this occasion, a vehicle speeding at over 160 kilometers an hour ended up crashing into this electric pole. It resulted in 3 deaths, including the driver. To prevent fatalities like these, Victor and his team monitor every inch of the town.
Хранителен магазин има много голям паркинг, на който се събират също големи групи млади хора и си показват автомобилите.
The superintendent knows their routine like the back of his hand.
Давай, има. Дай. Не, давайте направо тук и ще ги затиснем от двете страни. Дайте тук. 228, всичките коли искам да се запишат. Всички до една. И хората също.
A suspicious gathering is taking place at this supermarket parking lot. There are 20 or so young people hanging around their vehicles.
Добър вечер, да се приготвите документите, всичките ще... Добър вечер. Документите си пригответе на автомобила и вашите лични карти. На колегите ги давайте.
The police's trick is to check to see if the cars have been tampered with for racing.
Да, нека да дигнем, кажем, капака. И това момче на кой, нека се дигне капака да видим. Дайте газ хубаво, госпожо. Моля?
The engine noise is an important clue.
Колата издава звук, който не е нормален за нормален автомобил. Колегите ще спрат автомобила от движение и в утрешния ден колата трябва да се представи в пътна полиция за проверка на шумозаглушителното устройство. Визирам... Дай газ! Дай газ хубаво! Дай бе, човек! Дай газ!
The noise indicates that the engine has been modified to be more powerful.
Дай газ хубаво, газ дай! Хубаво!
Добре!
Както правиш на кръстовища, дай хубаво.
It's illegal.
Дигни капака предния. Не, да дойде да дигни капак. Дигнете. Те тръби какво си пригаждал нещо?
Кажете, слушам.
Пригаждат нещо е правилно тук това?
Това е изменение на конструкцията. Това не е заводско изпълнение. С кое? С нитро ли?
И с него ли?
С кое? Слушам та.
За охлаждане. Добре, ми затваряй, колега, и си взимай отношение. Другите, който е проверен.
Mission accomplished for the police officers. That evening, only 5 of the 10 vehicles examined were in legal order.
Говорят си и това в един даден момент може да излезат на булеварда и да почнат да се дърпат.
And although this time the young people were not caught in the act, their festivities have been cut short by these inspections. They incur a €70 fine for racing, but Most importantly, a 3-month driving ban and a requirement to bring their cars back to normal. These penalties are not enough. The city of Plovdiv has become the illegal racing capital of Bulgaria. Young enthusiasts are avoiding media attention at all costs. However, we were able to exclusively meet one of its oldest members. Meet Georgi. For 2 years, this young Bulgarian businessman has spent every weekend with his latest toy, this 367 horsepower German race car with a modified engine.
Практика с този двигател по спецификации на производителя и технически данни може да развие над 300 км в час. Подменихме гумите. Минахме на такива, които са спортни, но все пак легални за пътя. Подменихме спирачките, като отпред минахме на 6 бутални огромни апарати.
The height of fashion with special headlights installed for 350 euros.
И тази модификация реално я направих специално за моя син, защото той беше на 2 години и половина и трябваше по някакъв начин да го науча как се наричат цветовете.
In Plovdiv, it's about standing out. Altogether, he's spent over 20,000 euros in the space of a year, a small fortune in a country where the minimum wage is the equivalent of 342 euros a month. It's not clear where this money has come from, but according to Georgi, it's his savings.
Хора обичат да ходят на почивки и да имат снимки оттам. Има хора като мен, които обичат да влагат парите си в автомобили. Всъщност тази кола е като част от нашето семейство. Тази кола е любов. Отиваме в семейната кола. Това е колата за всеки ден.
This unrivaled champion knows the roads like the back of his hand. For years, he and his friends made the city streets their playground. They race for small bets, but mainly for the adrenaline rush.
Това, което правихме, излизахме ето така от тук. След което спирахме тук в дясно, имаше отбивка. Виждате ли? Ето отбивката. Ето го знак. През това време момчето, което трябваше да даде старт, идваше в средата на пътя. Заставахме ето така, давахме 3, 2, 1. 60.
On this busy road, right in the middle of other commuters, there's just 400 metres to the finish line. And to achieve victory, the illegal racers aren't afraid to break every law, including driving at speeds up to 200 kilometres an hour on this road, limited to 60. So far, Georgi has never been arrested, but his friends have not been so lucky. The family man has decided to stop participating in illegal races due to the dangers involved.
Преди 8 години, когато бях на 22 години, бях ерген. Всеки момент, дори на 30 години, аз съм готов да се състезавам с друга кола. Но вече осъзнавам, че тук, където се случваха тези неща, нито е времето, нито е мястото, защото може да пострадат хора.
A wise decision, but Georgi knows that the younger generation have taken over. On this road alone, illegal racers are responsible for around 20 accidents each year. Reckless behaviour that worries the authorities. In Plovdiv, there is a station dedicated entirely to road accidents. In the north of the city, 20 firefighters are on standby 24 hours a day. There are mandatory training sessions once a month. Inside this overturned car, the firefighters must rescue a crash test dummy. They only have a few minutes to get him out, but there is a problem.
Заключи се колата да му таковаш. Така можете да щупите задния прозорец, после на всички, като се маха на багажника.
The only way to free the injured person is with this hydraulic shear.
Добре, сега почвате малко по малко от тази страна и си говорите. Някой трябва да застане или тук или там да казва от коя. Добре, давайте, почваме да режем.
In less than 2 minutes, the passenger compartment is completely cut open.
Вите, помоги на Ген колко трябва нещо се справя. Тук на Мит колко трябва да му помага с тези неща.
To prevent the framework from crushing the injured person, the firefighters used the crane built into their truck.
Тези пластмасовите.
They can now safely rescue the victim.
Леко, леко, леко, леко, леко. Секунда, леко, ляво, дясно, добре. Чакай малко, бавно.
The Plovdiv Fire Brigade have fine-tuned this drill to perfection and take it very seriously. On call for all types of accidents in the region, the firefighters know they must deal with any type of situation. During an emergency, every second counts. For victims of internal bleeding and other localized injuries in Plovdiv, the seriously injured often die before arriving at hospital.
On Trakia, specifically on the Trakia, there is a very big road, very heavy traffic on the highway. So we've got car crashes almost, I don't know, maybe every day, maybe 1, 2, 3 per day.
The evidence continues today. A serious accident has just taken place on a small road in the suburbs of the city. Arriving at the scene, the firefighters were greeted by something out of a horror movie.
Шофьора на автомобила явно го не е видял, тъй като метеорологичните условия са били лоши, валяло е дъжд в тъмната част на денонощието.
Hurtling along at more than 120 kilometers an hour on a road limited to 90, the driver hit a pedestrian. The victim, who was killed instantly, was trapped in the windshield. The sheer dents on the car body alongside the traces of blood on the road show the force of the impact.
Почиствали се уредите и в 8 часа свършваме дежурство.
But now there is a risk of fire. The firefighters must urgently disconnect the battery. The slightest spark could cause this gas-powered car to explode. The driver has been taken to hospital in a state of shock. Tragic events like these have become all too common on the roads of Plovdiv. In the city, being a pedestrian isn't easy. Due to thoughtless drivers that run red lights and drive at full speed. This surveillance tape shows 2 Bulgarians narrowly escaping death. The same thing happens at pedestrian crossings. Here, a mother and her child are hit. It's the same situation here, but with a bus that knocks over a woman and her baby. The infant, by some miracle, escaped unharmed. The mother, meanwhile, remained in hospital for a few days after sustaining numerous head injuries. Every year, more than 1,300 pedestrians in Bulgaria fall victim to hit-and-run drivers. In Plovdiv alone, in less than a year, 165 pedestrians were injured and 13 were killed. The majority of the victims are young people under the age of 14. So, to prevent such tragedies, road safety awareness has become an important campaign. The highway police themselves are taking charge of it.
Добър ден! Вие помните ли?
Today, Superintendent Girganov is at a school in the north of the city speaking to some 10-year-old children.
Пак ще си припомним важните неща, свързани най-вече с безопасността на движението. Защото тези неща, които се случват навън на улицата, за да се случат, има някаква причина. Те моля да пресечеш улицата. Нещо направи с главичката, видяхте ли, деца? Ама той се огледа. Хайде сега да ви припомня аз. Колко пъти трябва да се оглеждаме? 1 път?
Не.
Колко? 2 пъти?
Не.
3 пъти? Да, 3 пъти. 3. Защото тук играят децата на улицата. В няколко от случаите те сами казаха, че стремежът ми беше да се опитам да ги извадя от тази инерция.
These school children may seem particularly attentive.
Добре, а този знак тук с тези хубавите дечица какво означава?
Този знак означава децата да не играят на улица, защото може да ги блъсне някоя кола.
And it's because they suffered a tragedy that left them traumatized.
Моя приятелка доста близка и се случва катастрофа. Защото аз се оглеждам и опитвам се да спазвам всичко, за да не
ходим по тротуара, защото ако не ходим по тротуара, може да ни изгази някоя кола, да ни блъсне. Затова винаги се ходи за тротуара.
Христо, заповядай.
Благодаря много.
Заповядай.
Благодаря.
Това са символични шофьорски книжки. Тази книжка представлява да ги стимулираме, да продължат поведението им да бъде безопасно.
Bulgaria is looking to the new generation to help rid itself of its title as the European country with the most accidents. By educating themselves on the dangers of the road, here's to hoping that the drivers of tomorrow may be more cautious.
Valencia, on the east coast of Spain, in the Mediterranean. A city that lies along the AP7 motorway linking the French border to southern Spain. One of the deadliest roads on the peninsula. Shocking accidents often occur here on weekend evenings, as seen in this CCTV footage. In an effort to put an end to this recklessness, Alberto and his colleagues at the Civil Guard monitor the blood alcohol levels of partygoers who leave the city's clubs. They encounter young people who often drive after consuming alcohol or drugs and who don't hesitate to speed through police roadblocks.
Y posteriormente vamos a cortar el carril central para desviar la circulación al derecho para finalmente sacarla a la rotonda donde vamos a establecer el punto de verificación.
Their plan is underway. Alberto and Jorge, his partner, go to join their colleague at the roundabout to carry out alcohol testing. The two officers barely have time to reach the checkpoint before one of their colleagues triggers the alarm. By forcing the roadblock, the driver almost hit an officer. With his powerful engine, he tries to escape. Alberto and Jorge put themselves in danger trying to catch up with him, driving at over 160 kilometers an hour. The officers try to keep the fugitive in sight. The fugitive has just driven off the motorway. The driver is hiding in the suburbs of Valencia, in the streets of this dimly lit village. The police have lost track of him.
Tiempo físico no le ha dado para desaparecer, para subir para allá para arriba. ¿Habrá ido a fuego o se habrá metido en algún callejón?
Alberto's intuition is right. The fugitive is not far away. On their way back to the motorway, close to the village where they lost the driver, Alberto and Jorge come face to face with a Valencia police patrol. A man is lying on the road, perhaps the driver who drove into the roadblock.
¿Ustedes dónde la habéis localizado?
Pues íbamos justo porque nos habían comisionado de que era por la carretera de Riu, 131, y hemos ido por aquí y hemos encontrado luego.
The officers are convinced that they caught the driver of the black car that almost crashed into them on the roundabout. They must find his vehicle.
¿Dónde está el coche?
¿Dónde tienes el coche, Carlos?
The young man seems to be on the verge of alcohol poisoning, unable to respond or stand up.
¿Pedimos una ambulancia? Sí.
Alberto wants to know how the young man ended up on the side of the road in such a state.
Esta noche has salido de fiesta, ¿verdad? ¿Y tú has bebido algo de alcohol?
Un vodka con limón.
Vale, solo un vodka con limón. ¿Y hasta aquí qué has llegado? ¿Andando? ¿O te has metido en algún coche para venir hasta aquí?
Taken into the ambulance's custody, the young man is about to pass out. The club is over 10 kilometers away, difficult to get there by walking.
La versión que nos da de por qué está aquí no se sostiene mucho.
His blood alcohol test is positive, but the level is too low for someone who seems to be close to a coma. Contacted by the officers to find out more about the suspect's profile, his father has just arrived on the scene.
¿Su hijo tiene alguna enfermedad o algo?
Nada, nada.
Vale, que es una persona normal, que trabaja...
Puede trabajar, está estudiando todavía.
The young man has no particular problem. Alberto suspects that he's exaggerating his condition to avoid disclosing his car's whereabouts. His father knows very well that if his son broke the police block, he risks jail. Spain, in the south of Europe, a top destination for tourists. Over 80 million of them visit the peninsula every year. Every summer, tourists use the AP9 motorway on the Atlantic side and the AP7 on the Mediterranean side, the two deadliest roads in Spain. In 2021, across the country, almost 3,500 serious injuries and more than 1,000 deaths were recorded, attributed to irresponsible behavior of drivers, often under the influence of drugs or alcohol, a plague among Spanish youth. In this motorbike-loving country, two-wheelers sometimes confuse the motorway with a racetrack. Motorcyclists suffer spectacular falls. In Spain, 1 out of every 2 motorbike accidents is fatal. On the AP9 that runs along the Atlantic coast, a microclimate creates dangerous fog, which causes fatal pileups. Millions of trucks travel along the AP9 and AP7 every year to reach major ports in Spain and Africa. Huge metal beasts swerving out of control, sweeping away everything in their path and causing complete carnage. Trucks which sometimes find themselves hurtling towards camping cars and caravans full of unsuspecting holidaymakers. For 2 months we met the drivers of these 2 motorways that run along the Spanish coast, drunk drivers.
Estoy bebiendo y conduciendo.
Victims of spectacular road accidents.
Me voy a matar.
And bikers balancing between life and death. On the peninsular roads, a serious accident is reported every 5 minutes. To track down road offenders, Spanish law enforcement agencies don't hold back. Big cars, helicopters, and weapons of war. They don't hesitate to use force to catch up with those who try to evade them.
Exactamente, este es un perfil que terminará en la cárcel. Entonces nuestro objetivo es ahora quitarlo de la carretera, ¿sabes? Siempre.
We follow the Iberian policemen on the 2 most dangerous roads in Spain. The father of the young man suspected of driving into a police roadblock is very worried. Alberto suspects that his son didn't walk here from the club as he claims. To convict him, the police must find the vehicle and prove that it was indeed the young man who was driving it.
Míralo, allí está el coche.
The car is below the motorway bridge,
¿Lo ve allí?
where the driver had lost the police during the chase.
Vamos a grabar cómo está el coche, ¿vale?
The car is only 100 meters from where the young man was found on the road. The police are sure of it.
Primero vamos a comprobar que sea el de este señor. La matrícula es 14-1 Floyd Bravo Yankee.
Afirmativo.
The car does belong to the young man. Back in the ambulance, he miraculously recovered within minutes. Alberto has no doubt that he was the driver who caused the hit and run last night.
Lo que nos estás contando dista un poco de lo que nos ha ocurrido, ¿vale?
The young man feels trapped. He loses his temper with the police.
Yo no le voy a
Estoy yo para que me den por culo ahora, básicamente, ¿no?
His father tries to calm him down.
No me jodas, papá. Aquí han venido a darme por culo a ver que les diga. No, sí. Mámame la polla, tengo las llaves del coche aquí la derecha.
Alberto remains calm and notices traces of mud on the young man's shoes.
Seamos educados. Entra y mira todo lo que...
No, no, si solo estoy mirando que están manchados igual que yo.
Sí, toma mis zapatillas, me las limpia.
The mud from the field where the car was found. The evidence is mounting against a young man. He would have arrived here on foot from the club. Fingerprinting in the car will surely lead to a conviction. If the police find his fingerprints in the passenger compartment, they can be sure that it was him who drove the car here and that he forced the roadblock.
Muy peligroso, casi atropella al compañero esta mañana. Crime. This is crime.
The driver faces up to 6 months in prison. Alcohol and drugs are responsible for 50% of the fatal accidents in Spain. On the AP7 motorway, which links Barcelona in the north to Algeciras in the extreme south of Spain, motorbikes are involved in 1 in 4 accidents. One of the most dangerous motorway exits is near Barcelona. This is Sergeant Ramon's territory. A traffic policeman, he belongs to the Mossos de Quadra, the police force of Catalonia.
Val, això és el 169. Doncs anirem per els túnels i sortirem al peatge.
Ramon has just received an emergency call.
Ens han informat que hi havia un accident entre una moto i un cotxe i és un tram que hem tingut uns quants accidents últimament. I l'últim va ser un accident d'un motorista i va morir aquí darrere.
At the scene of the accident, the exit of the AP7, chaos ensues. The two-wheeler and its rider were crushed under a car. The motorbike was completely destroyed. An ambulance quickly attended to the Spanish motorcyclist.
Bé.
Està bastant prou bé per...
Què ha fet, frontal?
Sí, frontal.
The man is alive but has sustained multiple fractures to his arms and legs.
El conductor del Kia s'ha dormit i ha entrat en sentit contrari i la moto que venia de cara no ha pogut evitar i ha xocat de front.
The motorcyclist hit the windscreen head-on. The marks on the car show the force of the collision.
Això és l'impacte de la motocicleta i allà tens i allà a sobre el conductor de la motocicleta que ha anat a parar a sobre del cotxe. El de la moto està ferit, però pel que podria haver estat, pràcticament no té res. Ha tingut molta sort.
The driver of the car, a Spaniard in his 40s, fell asleep at the wheel, causing a collision that could have killed the motorcyclist.
¿Estás bien?
Sí, fue un poco... ¿Qué ha pasado?
Fatigue, the first cause of death on Spanish motorways. 1 out of 2 motorcyclists don't survive such a frontal impact.
És a dir, hi ha accidents en moto, però darrerament n'hi ha molts més. Estem intentant analitzar per què en aquest moment, precisament, i per què són tan greus.
In 2021 in Spain, motorcyclists were victims of 25% of fatal accidents. The cause, the reckless behavior of two-wheeled drivers. In 2021, they were allowed to drive at 40 kilometers an hour on the side of the road to avoid slaloming between cars. An equally dangerous maneuver, drivers who cross white lines, speeding, and use the motorways for wild races at over 260 kilometers an hour. Races between bikers, but also with big cars. Speeding, which causes serious and horrific accidents. On the AP7 near Barcelona, another motorcyclist has just suffered a violent fall on the concrete.
Pentax 80 també s'està adreçant.
Sergeant Adela of the Catalan Traffic Police takes command of the operation.
Se ha producido un accidente donde ha implicado un motorista, ha caído y aparentemente está consciente, pero parece ser que tiene lesiones.
The motorbike crashed on the concrete, dragging the driver's body for 100 meters.
Se ven claramente las marcas, venía circulando. Ahora averiguaremos a ver por qué se ha caído.
An accident in the middle of a straight road, a mystery that Adela will try to solve.
Esperaba encontrarme aquí un teléfono móvil o algo, pero no, la verdad es que bastante... Estaba buscando un motivo de distracción. Porque un motorista que por el carril central de la autopista de 3, de repente, se le va la rueda...
An object on the road, a moment of neglect and the worst could happen. Slips that can cause fractures, serious burns, and even fatal accidents. The motorcyclist, a young Spanish engineer, is seriously injured. He's injured his cervical vertebrae and has multiple fractures in his legs and arms.
¿Crees que la tienes trancada?
Sí, bueno, seguro, ¿no?
The driver is not drunk. Adela wants to know why he crashed so terribly in a straight line.
Pero anaves pel carril central dels 3 carrils.
És una moto que, o lo que jo crec que porta unes maletes grans i ha entrat en oscil·lació. I cada cop més tens que tirar de l'angle.
The biker is very grateful.
Crec que en això he tingut sort. I he xocat i he anat rodant, no hi havia molts cotxes, llavors ningú.
Llavors és el destí, no?
És el destí, sí, totalment. Mai m'havia passat, mai m'havia caigut en una carretera. Però comptar-la i que això de la mà sigui una cosa temporal, saps?
The young man is shaking, shocked. He starts to realize that he had a near-death experience. Adela knows the risks of motorcycling. She's been taking care of these types of victims for 21 years on the roads of Catalonia.
Moto es sinónimo de lesiones. Moto es el cuerpo humano, el cuerpo al suelo es sinónimo de lesiones y aún...
In 2021 in Spain, over 1,500 motorcyclists were seriously injured. 230 died. The AP7 motorway serves the largest ports in Spain, including Barcelona and Valencia, and facilitates trade between the peninsula and the rest of the world. More than 7 million lorries cross the French Pyrenees every year. The AP7 is the busiest motorway in Europe for heavy goods vehicles. Metal beasts that are the cause of the most serious and spectacular accidents in the country, making the headlines on Spanish television.
Una mujer ha perdido la vida y otras 30 personas han resultado heridas. En el siniestro se han visto implicados medio centenar de vehículos. Ángela Loira.
The issue is the dangerous behavior of some drivers. To avoid these accidents on the AP7, Ramon and the Catalan police are stepping up checks on lorries at the toll booth.
Posa davant, indica. Pararemos aquí y vamos a hacer el control aquí. Doncs miri, acabem d'arribar ara mateix a la Jonquera.
La Jonquera, near the French border, a necessary passage for millions of trucks from all over Europe. Ramon outlines a control area large enough to accommodate several 17-meter-long vehicles.
Específicament ens dedicarem a vehicles de transport.
Ramon has a technique for spotting suspicious trucks.
A vegades detectem que els camions canvien de carril quan ens veuen. Intenten anar a la línia més llunyana per evitar que els parem. Si detectes un camió que està intencionadament anant, segurament hi ha alguna cosa per mirar.
Just then, a red lorry shifts into the left-hand lanes. Ramon decides to check it.
Doncs hi ha dos conductors. Un està conduint i l'altre està descansant i això es pot comprovar a través del tacògraf, que és el que farem ara.
Both drivers have a card which they enter into the tachograph. The device electronically records driving and resting times. In Spain, the drivers must take turns every 4 hours. To check if the brake policy has been respected, the police extract information from the device on this ticket.
Aquest viatge en principi ve des de Polònia i ara aquí és l'aturada que hem fet aquí a Catalunya. Podem apreciar que el descans diari l'han fet a França. Cuando esta actividad que nos registra aquí en todo el día 29, que son 24 horas de descanso, no sale ni el 1 ni el 2, es porque esta actividad no está registrada por el tacógrafo.
Ramon and his colleagues want to know if the drivers drove on their time off during that 24-hour gap. A classic time saver on the road. But there is a risk of falling asleep at the wheel and losing control of the truck. Drivers who are under pressure from their bosses to cross Spain faster and make more deliveries.
we are here every week, so it's my first control in Spain. We don't have a conformity that we are last week off. I got only a bill that I was at my GP, and that's all now. And we need to clear that.
The driver may have forgotten to insert his card or tampered with the tachograph. The most common form of fraud is touching a magnet to the device to stop it from working while they continue to drive on break times. The drivers are not about to go back to the south of Spain. The infringement will cost their boss a lot of money.
El camión muy probablemente va a quedar inmovilizado. Y el problema es que hay dos infracciones, una para cada conductor.
¿Cuánto es?
Son 1.000 euros cada conductor.
The Spanish police are unforgiving with drivers, as accidents with trucks are far too common and often fatal on the peninsula's motorways. In 2021, more than 10% of fatal accidents were caused by heavy goods vehicles. Fatigue, but also irresponsible behavior of some drivers. The AP7, a very long straight road stretching thousands of kilometers. Long and dull journeys. To pass the time, some drivers even party in their trucks, like this Eastern European driver who dances while his heavyweight truck rolls on by itself. A moment of negligence at the wheel of a truck weighing over 40 tons almost guarantees a very spectacular road exit. Madness that can cost the lives of road users who cross their path, including the driver. Just as fatigue and dangerous driving behavior, overloaded trucks also cause major accidents. In addition to monitoring drivers' hours of travel, Spanish police officers also check the weight of their trucks. On another toll booth on the AP7, Sergeant Adela spotted one filled to the brim.
Vale, como va cargado, a continuación vamos a hacer el pesado de la carga aquí en estas bandas. Si supera el límite de lo que tiene autorizado a transportar. Sí. Es peligroso y legalmente tienen un máximo para transportar. Las básculas están a 0,0. Ahora, 3.550 en aquel lado, 3.850 en este lado.
They weigh it several times at the axles on each side of the truck. Sand is one of the heaviest materials to transport.
¿Qué lleva arena? Arena.
The truck is way too heavy.
Y al final va pasado 5.000 kilos. Es grave, es una sanción grave. En 47.000 y lo máximo son 38.000. Se pasaba un poco.
5 tons over the authorized limit could have cost him nearly 1,500 euros in France and double that if it's a repeat offense. In Spain, the fine is less expensive than in France.
900 euros.
And 630 euros if the driver pays on the spot.
Se lo vamos a notificar al... Vale. ¿Sabe usted que va con sobrepeso?
No.
En esto que hemos hecho el pesado, hemos calculado que lleva 47.
A ver, llevamos una hoja de seguimiento.
¿Sí?
De donde cargamos, de donde descargamos, pero no sabemos el peso.
Que tiene que saber si usted frena, si va a responder el vehículo, si va con 5.000...
El camión no responde, porque eso es un 4 patas.
Da igual 5.000 kilos más, da igual.
Con la experiencia usted lo sabe también.
The driver tries to persuade Adela, but in addition to the fine, the policewoman will increase the sanctions.
Hay que movilizar el vehículo. Debería sacar el exceso de peso para poder continuar. No puede continuar con este exceso de peso.
Unloading sand on the motorway, an operation that will take several hours to complete. Adela also checks the driver's tachograph. She doesn't intend to do him any favors. An overweight truck on the highway is a disaster waiting to happen.
Estamos hablando de 38 toneladas como mínimo en movimiento. Un accidente con un camión es como un accidente con un edificio. Es terrible.
Every year on the AP7, overloaded trucks cause fatal accidents. A simple gust of wind and the truck can lose its balance. The motorway exits in Spain are known for their sometimes sharp bends, which can easily cause accidents. With the slightest braking in the event of rain, the metal beasts take everything in their path. In 2021, more than 10,000 truck accidents were recorded. Many truck drivers lost their lives. In the Valencia district along the AP7 motorway, the highest number of traffic accidents are recorded, with one collision every 15 minutes. The road is a dangerous place for drivers, but also for the police. At the police headquarters of the Civil Guard in Valencia, Alberto gets ready for his shift. The policeman has been monitoring the roads for 15 years. He's already lost several colleagues killed in action.
El mayor riesgo que tenemos nosotros en la agrupación de tráfico es que nos puedan atropellar. Nos atropella igualmente y al final la víctima somos nosotros y nuestra familia.
He's never had an accident. This is because the 35-year-old is very careful.
Un chaleco amarillo. Siempre. La seguridad es lo primero.
Their outfits are the first layer of protection for the traffic police. Alberto and his colleagues risk their lives every day to protect drivers.
Nos han avisado de un imposible incendio de un coche encima de un puente justamente a la que será probablemente la mayor vía que tiene Valencia, tanto en la que conecta con Madrid.
The accident took place at the junction between the A3 motorway and the AP7, a few kilometers from Valencia. It's difficult to access the burned vehicle. The motorway is blocked. A car has broken down on the road, which could cause a pileup. Alberto has to get it off the road as soon as possible. Amongst the speeding cars, the policemen push the vehicle. They must be quick. A driver could mow them down at any moment.
¡Tira pa'lante! ¡Pa'lante! ¡Vamos a eliminar la gasolinera!
Alberto is always wary of interventions like these, walking on the highway, as Spanish police are often victims of accidents, as seen in this footage where speeding drivers put police lives in danger. With help from the occupants of the car, Alberto was able to free the vehicle and restore the traffic.
Despacito. Venga, frena despacio, despacio, despacio, frena. Frena, frena, frena, frena, frena. Venga, chicos. Venga, hasta luego.
Jorge and Alberto take to the road again. A few hundred meters away, they come across the car fire.
Vale, ok. Vámonos.
At the scene of the accident, the car is completely burned. A fireman from Valencia has just managed to put out the fire.
Es un fallo mecánico. Ahora, mientras no respiren los gases que están saliendo, no hay ningún problema. No hay víctimas. Ha ido una chica y un bebé, pero están.
A miracle considering the state of the car. No victims to rescue. Alberto has no time to linger.
Nos vamos a otro accidente. Venga.
In Valencia, the accidents follow one after another, nearly 4 every hour. To help drivers as quickly as possible, for 14 years, Jorge has spent his day driving with his foot to the paddle.
¿Tienes miedo de conducir tan rápido?
No, no, nunca. No es una cuestión de confianzas.
This 48-year-old policeman from Valencia is a passionate skier and motorbike racer. A former alpine hunter, he loves wide open spaces, adrenaline and speed. To drive fast and safely, he underwent rigorous training.
Son 3 meses intensivos de curso de tráfico, a desenvolverte con todas estas situaciones.
Jorge attended the Civil Guard driving school with the aim of rescuing drivers as quickly as possible without ever putting himself in danger.
No, con velocidad no. Habilidad. Porque hay mucha gente que corre, pero terminan estrellándose. Que nosotros estamos para prevenir los accidentes y para acudir a ellos, no para tener nosotros un accidente.
The 2 Spanish police officers drive over 2,000 kilometers a week. Jorge is an outstanding driver, even in adverse weather conditions. For most motorists, driving becomes more complicated when fog and rain are introduced to the mix. we find even more extreme weather conditions on the AP9 motorway north of La Coruña. This local microclimate is responsible for serious accidents every year. The fog regularly settles over an area of about 100 kilometers. This occurs in winter as well as summer, a trend that causes serious pileups. The most spectacular one in 2014, 30 vehicles crashed into each other, leaving 1 dead and over 30 injured. It's early in the morning and the fog has lifted, but the roads are still slippery and already Hector's first call. He is a member of the Civil Guard, the police force of La Coruña.
La central nos avisa que ha habido un accidente en una de las salidas de la autovía. Entonces vamos a comprobar pues, si es grave, si hay heridos, lo antes posible.
At the scene of the tragedy, the damage is shocking. The car flipped over, a child's seat was ejected, and the glass sunroof exploded. In the car, a family with 2 children. The father was driving.
Debido a la salida de la vía, ha volcado sobre la calzada, ha perdido el control y ha volcado.
With his vision obscured by the fog, the driver couldn't distinguish the fork in the road at the motorway exit.
Que se ha salido de la vía, aquí está el primer impacto, que es toda la tierra que se ve aquí, es de esta zona donde ha impactado.
The driver hit the embankment. He was unable to regain control of the car on the wet road. It ended up flipping. The state of the vehicle speaks volumes about the violence of the impact.
Tenemos restos de sangre al volcar, más sumado la ruptura de la luna, pues posiblemente hiciera algún tipo de corte en la zona de la cabeza de la persona que va delante, incluso pudiera llegar algo a salpicar los cristales a los menores que iban detrás.
The victims have been taken care of by the emergency services, but the police in La Coruña are worried about the state of the car.
Para saber cómo están las personas, ¿vale? Que es lo que ahora mismo más nos importa, ¿vale? Esperemos que esté bien y que todo quede en un susto. Tenemos restos de sangre.
Hector sometimes sees several accidents like these a day around La Coruña, particularly when bad weather hits the area. Rain mixed with car oil makes for extremely slippery roads. Wheels spin out of control and vehicles end up crashing into safety railings or drive off the road. Uncontrolled skidding accounts for 40% of fatal accidents in Spain. A little further down the motorway, another accident has just occurred.
Vale, paramos del otro sentido y ya cruzamos.
A Spanish motorist's car crashed into the safety barrier.
Cota de C21.
The driver of the car was able to get out of the vehicle. At almost 80 years old, he's in a state of shock.
Muy buenas. ¿Qué tal? ¿Cómo está la señora? ¿Quiere usted el conductor?
No.
The old man feels guilty. His wife was seriously injured in the accident.
Escúcheme. Me voy a matar. No, se va a matar, pero no puede andar por ahí, no puede andar por ahí. Siéntese ahí, apóyese.
The old man is inconsolable, but he's not the only one responsible for the disaster.
Está claro que un poco la falta de pericia, la lluvia y bueno.
With the bad weather specific to this area of northwest Spain, it's not surprising the driver slipped on the road. The old man's car is now a crumpled heap of metal. Thankfully, his wife survived with some bruising and intense neck pain. Fortunately, the elderly husband and wife had fastened their seatbelts.
Gracias a que llevaban el cinturón de seguridad no hay más gravedades en el accidente, pero bueno, los daños son impresionantes porque bueno, ahora los vehículos están construidos para que se deformen y absorban el impacto, solo el habitáculo interior está intacto.
The weather seems to have been solely responsible for the tragedy, as the old man was confirmed fit to drive. In Spain, people over 65 are tested for their hearing, reflexes and speed every 5 years in order to keep their license. Victim to the slippery roads, Hector will not find the driver. He suffered enough from the trauma of the event. Bad weather is responsible for half of the fatal accidents on the AP9. The driver was not at fault. With the information he provided to Hector, the police will be able to conclude that bad weather was the main cause of the accident. But when drivers are unable to cooperate with the police, the investigators take charge. As for the taxi that hit another vehicle, the driver is in a life-threatening condition. Juan Manuel works for the investigative department of the Catalan police in Barcelona. Driver error or company vehicle failure? The police officer will have to determine who's responsible for the accident, to find out who should pay for the taxi's repairs and the driver's compensation.
¿Para qué necesitas ponerte los guantes?
Esto lo ponemos para evitar cortarnos con los plásticos o con los cristales que...
The investigator retrieves information from the wreckage to reconstruct the course of the collision before, during and after the impact.
Vamos primero ahí dentro del vehículo y cuando lo han retirado del lugar, lo han colocado dentro puertas, diferentes elementos para choques. Vamos a retirarlos para después acceder a la centralita del airbag.
The airbag casing contains valuable information, like the black box of a plane after a crash. Juan Manuel is looking for an access to the airbag box, located behind the gearbox.
Hay una muy visible, la otra.
The control system of the taxi's airbag is this yellow box, essential to reconstruct the course of the accident.
Adentro de esta caja están los datos de información. Estamos buscando esos 5 segundos pre-colisión, que son los que dicen velocidad, si hay maniobra de frenado, antes de la colisión. Intentaremos extraerla para poder sacar los datos.
Juan Manuel tears off all the plastic frames that protect the case to access it.
Este es el módulo que estábamos buscando. Seguramente nos lo llevaremos para hacer la extracción en la oficina.
To complete the investigation, in addition to the photos, the policeman will model the wreckage of the taxi with a scanner installed on his smartphone, a way to evaluate the power of the collision.
Aquí apreciamos que están las vigas torcidas, deformadas.
And the result is impressive. The taxi has been reconstructed in 3D, representing each impact on the bodywork.
Nos permitirá comparar esta estructura con la estructura de un vehículo nuevo.
Near Barcelona, at the headquarters of the Catalan police, 5 officers conduct over 100 investigations per year to determine the causes of the most serious accidents. Juan Manuel has sophisticated technical equipment at his disposal to do his job.
Aquí estamos conectando el CDR de Bosch, que es el sistema que nos permite extraer los datos de la centralita del airbag de este vehículo accidentado. Tenemos que conectarlo al ordenador.
In a few seconds, he has a detailed report on the taxi crash.
Y lo más interesante son esos 5 segundos previos a la colisión, una información muy variada sobre velocidad de circulación, giro del volante, línea verde, tenemos una reducción de velocidad porque hay una activación del freno.
The speed and braking data will illustrate the violence of the impact between the taxi and the other vehicle.
En el segundo -5 estaba a 101 km/h y que como a partir del momento en el cual se activa el sistema de freno, se aprecia esa reducción de velocidad. El último registro es 63 km/h.
63 kilometers an hour, the speed at which the taxi shown in blue in the simulation hit the other car. Thanks to the speed, braking and distance data, Juan Manuel can even obtain a 3D simulation of the accident. A crucial investigation for the driver, his family and the taxi company, as the crash claimed lives.
En este accidente hubo 2 heridos graves y una persona muerta. Para las víctimas y para las familias, tener claro lo que sucedió, quién circulaba a qué velocidad, especialmente si hay muertos, la familia pues tiene derecho a saber qué es lo que sucedió.
According to the conclusions of the investigation, the taxi driver fell asleep at the wheel. He was therefore responsible for the accident. In Spain, 28 million motorists travel the country's roads each year. In the Barcelona metropolitan area, 1.2 million cars enter and leave the capital of Catalonia every day. Most of them use the AP7, which runs through the city, a motorway that offers many straight roads, ideal for adrenaline junkies. Ramon and the Catalan police officers set up a speed control.
Bueno, això és el dispositiu que detecta la velocitat dels vehicles. Evidentment, té dues parts. Una és la càmera la que fa la fotografia i l'altra part és el sensor de velocitat.
The motorways are limited to 120 kilometers an hour, a speed limit many find difficult to respect.
Les autopistes són uns llocs que donen una falsa sensació de seguretat. La nova configuració dels vehicles, que aïllen molt del so, fa que la gent tingui que no hi ha risc.
Spanish mobile radars are quite lenient. For a speed of 130 kilometers an hour, only 120 would be recorded with a mandatory fine. The radar takes pictures of the number plates and captures speeding information that Ramon receives directly on his in-car tablet.
La fotografia ens indica el lloc on s'ha fet la infracció, la velocitat màxima a la que es podia circular i la velocitat real a la que circula.
Ramon and his colleagues don't go lightly on the speeders. A large car has just triggered the counter.
Repeteixo, BMW sèrie 1 negra, 46, Hotel Delta a 188.
68 kilometers per hour above the authorized limit.
Qualsevol anomalia tècnica en aquest vehicle a aquesta velocitat és un accident gairebé segur.
Spanish drivers have 12 points on their license. With speeding like this, the driver risks these points being taken away. A police motorcyclist chases the German sedan. Not easy to spot in the stream of cars. A police helicopter helps him out. Equipped with an onboard camera, it surveys the motorway. Even at 500 meters altitude, with its powerful zoom, the camera can read any license plate and spot cars that surpass the speed limit. They'll soon catch the reckless driver. Thanks to footage from an onboard camera, the biker will be able to locate him on the ground. Trained to push his machine to the limit to catch the madman, the policeman manages to catch up to the driver and asks him to exit the motorway.
El senyor? Sí, aguantació, senyor. Miri, anava a 149, limitació de 120.
Drivers often try their hand at feigning innocence.
Si el coche va a 120 con regulador, ¿cómo puedo discutir de eso?
Ciertamente yo le puedo decir que estos equipos están certificados. El error es...
Caught at 188 kilometers an hour. A fine of 500 euros for surpassing the limit by 68 kilometers an hour, the driver will also get 5 points off his license. Not too strict. In other European countries, the punishment is much more severe.
La multa me la como y punto, ¿no?
Yo entiendo que sí.
In Spain, if the offender pays on the spot, they get a 50% reduction of the fine. Money collected directly by the police via a bank terminal. There is so much reckless behavior that a traffic control center has been dedicated to tracking down violations and dangers to drivers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. To monitor traffic, dozens of cameras have been installed along the motorways, in the buildings of the General Directorate of Road Traffic in La Coruña. Ruben watches over the most important roads in the region.
Son 300 cámaras. Aquí lo que hacemos es una visual de toda la zona que controlamos. Por ejemplo, una zona importante que tenemos aquí es la zona de esta de la autodeción con la 8, la cámara fija. Aquí a la altura del conductor, que esta está para nosotros ver si realmente hay niebla y una poquito más alta.
Thanks to the cameras, the traffic control officer can spot traffic jams, accidents, or dangerous behavior on the road. Problems that he reports directly to the police and to motorists via electronic billboards. But Ruben can't catch everything. Every day he also receives calls from drivers reporting dangers on the roads.
¿Tráfico? Sí, hola, buenos días. ¿Sí? Indico sentido contrario. Sí, por favor, dime. Carretera, kilómetro. Sí, AP9, kilómetro 71. Ok, perfecto, muchas gracias. Buenos días, chao. Sentido contrario. Pongo el protocolo, tenemos un protocolo estipulado.
In addition to the Spanish police, the agent must warn drivers on the AP9 motorway to avoid more accidents.
Antonio, dime, por favor, un grupo de retenciones. Hay retenciones. Está el sentido contrario, ya tenemos creado. Antes de nada, ponemos el plan de señalización para que los conductores queden informados.
Thanks to the surveillance camera, Ruben sends the precise position of the driver to the police patrols. Oncoming traffic, reckless drivers threatening unknowing travelers, blocking traffic, and causing serious accidents. Thanks to Ruben's information, Hector goes in search of the vehicle.
Mira, el panel pone vehículo en sentido contrario, extrema precaución.
All patrols are in pursuit of the driver.
El coche se lo tiene que encontrar, si ha continuado y si no tiene que estar parado por aquí.
The driver exited the motorway, but one of the civil guard patrols stopped him in a car park. The traffic police go to check out the driver.
Vamos a buscar la documentación, ¿vale?
The man pretends to look for them on his phone.
Estamos esperando porque parece ser que tampoco tiene carnet de conducir.
The driver has no vehicle documents or license. Hector wants to know if he was fit to drive.
Señor, venga por aquí. Le vamos a hacer la prueba de alcohol, ¿vale? ¿Toma algo de alcohol?
Sí, bebió 2 cervezas.
2 cervezas. Vale, le vamos a hacer la prueba, ¿vale?
The man drank much more than 2 beers.
A 1,06.
1.06 milligrams per liter of exhaled air, or 2.1 grams per liter of blood.
Es 4 veces más de lo permitido. No se puede tomar alcohol para conducir. ¿Entiende?
He drove 8 kilometers in the opposite direction of the traffic at over 2 grams. There's evidence in his car that he was drinking and driving.
Bueno, todavía lleva lo que estaba bebiendo, cervezas, latas, viene de consumir alcohol, claramente.
The man changes his tune, provoking Hector and his colleagues.
Estoy bebiendo y conduciendo. Tú no bebes nunca ninguna cerveza y te pones para conducir. Pero estoy bebiendo 6, ¿eh?
The equivalent of 3 liters of alcohol. The driver's on the verge of contempt. He even opens one last can for the road in front of the police.
Claro, hombre. Y estamos peatones. Falta que bebemos, ¿no?
¿Qué ha pasado? Contame. ¿Te recuerdas lo que ha pasado?
Ponte por el coche y ya está. Que estoy bebiendo y yo estoy loco cuando estoy bebiendo, ¿eh?
An attitude that annoys Hector.
Paciencia, hay que tener paciencia. Menudo peligro en la carretera. Es una bomba. Que tú vas con tu familia bien y una persona como esta puede acabar con tu vida. Entonces nuestro objetivo es ahora quitarlo de la carretera.
The man from Eastern Europe is known to the Spanish police for theft and petty crimes. He will go straight to prison. Drunk and driving the wrong way, Hector and his colleagues have stopped a tragedy from happening on the AP9. A full frontal impact could have been fatal. In 2021, 60% of fatal accidents on the peninsula were run-off road or head-on collisions. Summer is the peak tourist season in Spain. 80 million tourists flock to the Iberian beaches every year. 75% of motorways are free of charge. A godsend for the millions of tourists who cross the Pyrenees every year, often in caravans. Summer is also the time for the most serious of accidents. More than 3 out of 10 fatal accidents occur during the summer season in Spain. Adela has just started her patrol on the AP7 near Barcelona. On the motorway, many motorhomes make their way to the sunny south of the country, and already an accident has occurred.
coche amb una caravana.
Caravana.
Creo que no se sabe nada.
No se sabe todavía.
The collision caused damage. Objects scattered on the road could cause serious accidents.
Tendremos que cortar la autopista para poder recuperar todos los objetos que hay en los carriles. Bueno, es la solución más drástica, pero a la vez es la solución más segura.
Adela starts by blocking the highway. All vehicles on the holiday road will have to stop. The policewoman has to be quick to avoid huge traffic jams.
Sacar esto porque eso puede provocar otro accidente. Esto me preocupa por los motoristas. Esto es una rueda pinchada, seguro. Eso va a ser una rueda de un camión, ¿ves ahí abajo?
On the road, remains of tires from a large vehicle.
No sé si de un camión o de una caravana. Ahora sabremos de qué es.
What's more worrying are the clothes and a metal part from one of the vehicles.
¿Y esto? Esto va a ser de la caravana, ¿ves? Tiene pinta de ser una pieza del enganche. Lo vamos a ver ahora, lo vamos a llevar.
A sharp piece of metal, the cause of the accident. The vehicles that crashed may have continued further down the motorway. Adela must quickly find the driver who burst their tire. In summer, detaching caravans is an eternal issue. On the AP7, the sergeant will receive help from the agents of the General Traffic Directorate.
Están diciendo la central que por cámaras están viendo 4 caravanas paradas en el lateral.
These caravans belong to several Dutch families on holiday.
Hola, ¿quién es el dueño? ¿Es suyo esto?
¿Qué?
¿Qué? L'hem tret dels carrils de l'autopista, l'hem recollit dels carrils. Ah, vale.
A very sharp iron object was the cause of an accident.
Hòstia, vale.
An object that damaged the caravan.
La banda de rodadura que hemos recogido en la autopista ha ido golpeando y ha tocado con la parte interior de la caravana, ¿ves? Y ahí está la ropa. Debe haber cogido alguna parte de un armario o de un mueble de dentro de la caravana y es lo que ha provocado que haya caído ropa.
The rest of the clothes found wrapped around the wheel. A few kilometers from the beaches of Costa Brava, the Dutch tourists' Spanish holiday almost turned into a tragedy.
This was on the road. On my tire and tire exploded. It was very scary.
The Dutch family avoided the worst. Thanks to the firemen and Adela, they will be able to continue their holiday to the sunny south of Spain. Always ready to help and hunt down reckless drivers, the determination of the Spanish police force has paid off. In 2020, Spain dropped below 900 road deaths, a great source of pride for the Spanish police officers who work tirelessly to protect Spain's most dangerous roads.